Chapter 1. It had been raining nonstop for 24 hours, and the already hot and humid summer day made it hard to breathe. A skinny and sunny youth was fiddling with an old artificial intelligence phone for a long time before the phone turned on. Lin Yuan let out a breath of relief. It was fortunate that the phone wasn't broken. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to handle a new phone. After the phone turned on, Lin Yuan logged into the Fey web that he frequented previously. He realized that his account actually had 99 plus replies, and he had merely replied to one question. Last night, when he was sleeping, Lin Yuan saw a thread asking what to do after getting bitten by a ghost shadow-bristled spider. Lin Yuan replied as a matter of course, "Don't panic after getting bitten by a ghost shadow-bristled spider. Drink more hot water and radix isatitis root before cleaning the wound. Find a shady and ventilated place to lie down under the shade of a tree to prevent the corpse from smelling. If your finances allow it, it is best to place a mat under your body." After looking through all sorts of replies, Lin Yuan heard the sound of a thin rope, and a grayish-black kitten pounced on Lin Yuan's leg. Just as the kitten pounced on Lin Yuan's leg, the sound of flapping wings echoed from nearby. A green sparrow-like bird perched on Lin Yuan's shoulder and chirped twice. Lin Yuan quickly put down the phone and spoke to the grayish-black kitten on his leg. "Smart, what's the store's temperature now?" The kitten on Lin Yuan's leg flopped and opened its mouth before replying with a childish voice. "The temperature inside is 34 degrees Celsius. Lin Yuan, you should go and ventilate now." When Lin Yuan heard it, he quickly carried the grayish-black kitten and ran downstairs with the chirping green bird on his shoulder. The sky was just starting to brighten, but Lin Yuan had already opened the window and walked to the flower rack. At that moment, the grayish-black kitten spoke again. "Lin Yuan, take your medicine first." Lin Yuan quickly stopped and went to pour some water. At that moment, the green bird on his shoulder had already brought the medicine tablet over. Lin Yuan took the pill from the cyan bird and tossed it into his mouth. He then drank the water in the cup in one gulp. At that moment, the green bird couldn't help but want to sing, but Lin Yuan quickly covered its mouth. "Enin, don't attract Andy Zhang next door when you sing now." The kitten on Lin Yuan's lap and the little bird that could sing on his shoulder looked rather mystical. However, 100 years after the spirit chi awakening, the grayish-black kitten and the cyan bird were the most ordinary existences in the world. Almost everyone had one of them. The kitten was called Genius. It was 100 questions beast. It was like a walking book with 100 whys. It could also take on the role of a simple housekeeper. It could be considered a housekeeping beast. However, compared to the white question beasts on the market, this grayish-black kitten was thin and small, as if it was malnourished. This was the truth. Lin Yuan's 100 questions beast was one of the cubs that the female 100 questions beast had given birth to, due to the uneven color of its fur. It looked like it was dirty and had not been able to be sold. As such, the boss reduced the price by half, giving Lin Yuan a bargain. The birds that could sing were called sound birds. It was rare to see sound birds being sold in the market. That was because most of the birds sold in the market were songstress birds, which were an advanced form of sound birds. The songstress bird was like a living music player. A smart songstress bird could learn more than 100 songs. The cyan sparrow-like sound bird on Lin Yuan's shoulder was a sound bird that had failed to evolve into a songstress bird. When the spirit pet boss saw that Lin Yuan was hesitating when buying the 100 questions beast, he used this sound bird as a bargaining chip and gave it to Lin Yuan. Under Lin Yuan's guidance for the past 2 years, the sound bird already knew how to sing a song. Chimey was this little sound bird, and when it came home, it would always be dejected. All living things had spirits and could naturally feel everything around them. Therefore, Lin Yuanming would always praise Chimey, slowly building up Chimey's confidence. Especially after Chimey learned a song, it would become lively. A malnourished and abandoned 100 questions beast, a sound bird that had failed to evolve and was treated as trash, and a thin and weak youth. The three of them looked rather weak, but they were managing the Fey store that his parents had left behind in an orderly manner. After consuming the medicine, Lin Yuan walked to the flower bed and carefully removed the black cloth that was drying on the flower bed. 5 succulent plants that looked like lotuses were growing in the clay pot. They were emerald green in color and had a faint fragrance that was almost undetectable. After carefully inspecting the 5 jasmine lilies, Lin Yuan couldn't help but let out a sigh when he saw one of them. One of the jasmine lily's leaves had turned soft. When will this hot weather end? The jasmine lily was a commonly seen healing-type spirit plant. 100 years after the spirit qi awakening, all living things in the world had been influenced by spirit qi and were evolving and mutating. The jasmine lily was a type of succulent plant before the spirit qi awakening, and it was one of them. It was considered a commonly seen healing-type spirit plant. If it was placed at home and accidentally cut one's finger while cutting vegetables, one just had to place the jasmine lily at the bedside, and the cut on the finger would be as good as new the next day. Of course, there were spirit qi professionals that would choose the jasmine lily as a contracted fae. However, the jasmine lily was a low-grade fae, and it was very difficult for it to evolve. The 5 pots of jasmine lilies in Lin Yuan's store were all normal grade. If they surpassed elite grade and reached bronze grade, the jasmine lily would be on par with other healing-type spirit plants of the same grade. Everything was conserved, and people despised low-grade faes because it was truly difficult for them to evolve. However, if a low-grade fae could constantly evolve into a high-grade fae, Lin Yuan had heard rumors that it would be able to suppress other high-grade faes of the same grade in certain aspects. The rise of a low-grade fae was like a small character that slowly climbed up the clouds from the dust. It wasn't like a high-grade fae that was born to be at the peak. High-grade faes could also evolve, and it was much easier for them to evolve as compared to low-grade faes. Therefore, very few people would nurture low-grade faes. With the resources to nurture low-grade faes, it was possible to nurture a few high-grade faes at the same time. Take the 100 Questions beast and the songstress bird for example. Almost everyone had one. However, in the 100 years of the spirit qi awakening, no one had heard of the 100 Questions beast and the songstress bird evolving. After carefully tending to the 5 pots of jasmine lilies and burying them with nutrient-rich ores, Lin Yuan was already panting slightly even though he didn't do much work. Lin Yuan's store might be a store, but there were only 2 types of spirit plants, 5 pots of jasmine lilies, and over a dozen pots of usneas. The usneas couldn't even be considered a normal fae, and were considered a variant of the usneas before the spirit qi awakening. It eliminated the slight toxicity in the body and increased the nutrition content and growth speed of the vines. This also made the usneas the best fodder for low-grade herbivores or omnivores. The dozen pots of usneas would give Lin Yuan 101-meter-long vines every day. Lin Yuan looked at the pots of usneas like an old mother and didn't bother tending to them. He said, "I still have to rely on these pots of usneas to maintain my daily life. It is considered an unexpected surprise to sell 1 pot of jasmine lily." However, Lin Yuan, who was looking at the usneas like an old mother, didn't have any intention to tend to them. Instead, he put all his attention on the 5 pots of jasmine lilies. Chapter 2. When the store opened for business, it was just a few minutes before 7 am at that moment. Lin Yuan stood beside the flower rack and felt even more tired than usual. This was due to his weak spiritual energy. Lin Yuan was already rather familiar with the tiredness he felt when opening the store every day. However, there was a sense of dizziness in the depths of his head today, and it seemed to be getting stronger. "Meow, Lin Yuan, go sit on the stool for a while." It then crawled along Lin Yuan's pants and clothes until it reached his neck. It trembled as it stood up and gently massaged Lin Yuan's head with its little paws, which were covered with soft and thick meat pads. The sound bird was also flying around anxiously, as though it was wondering why Lin Yuan looked so much weaker than usual. Lin Yuan forced himself to be alert and hugged the 100 Questions beast, Genius, in his embrace. His fair and bony fingers brushed across the 100 Questions beast's gray and black fur, making it very glaring. "Genius, Chimey, the 2 of you don't have to worry about me. Perhaps I didn't sleep well last night." As Lin Yuan spoke, he started to ponder carefully. Could I have really contracted an illness again? The money I was earning from maintaining this store was limited, and it was only enough to support my younger sister's school fees. The money I had to save up for my meals was always saved up. The poor were most afraid of illnesses. After the spirit chi awakening, any incurable illness before the spirit chi awakening could be easily resolved. One just had to find a spirit chi professional with a high-grade healing type Fey to treat it once. However, for a single treatment from a spirit chi professional with a high-grade Fey, Ling Yuan's store wouldn't be able to afford it even with 2 or 3 months of sales. Ling Yuan might be speaking like this, but Genius and Chimy's anxiety didn't decrease at all. It was as though they were afraid of losing their most precious things. To Genius and Chimy, they were just 2 inferior housekeeping pets that were rejected and despised, while Ling Yuan was their entire world. At 7 a.m. sharp, a straightforward and shrewd voice echoed punctually at the door. "Little Yuan, I have told you many times. Next time, don't open the store so early. Just open it after 8 a.m. You can also have a good rest." As the middle-aged woman spoke, she placed a wooden box on Lin Yuan's counter. Then, he looked at Lin Yuan with a gentle gaze and said, "Don't worry. Same as always, give me 10 usnea vines." When Lin Yuan heard this passionate and shrewd voice, a bright smile appeared on his face. This sunny smile on Lin Yuan's face made him look very amiable like a spring breeze. "Auntie Zhang, I've told you many times not to bring me breakfast when you're shopping." While speaking, Ling Yuan had already swiftly cut off the usnea vines. A pot of usnea could grow 13 to 14 1.5-meter-long usnea vines in about a day. A usnea vine was exactly 1 meter long. Ling Yuan's scissors cut off 10 usnea vines that were exactly 1.5 meters long. Then, he used a piece of cloth to tie up the 10 usnea vines that were 1.5 meters long. A bunch of crisp and delightful usnea vines were collected by Lin Yuan. When Auntie Zhang saw Lin Yuan squatting down and skillfully tidying up the usnea vines, her eyes flashed with kindness and heartache. As an old neighbor, Auntie Zhang had witnessed how Lin Yuan had to support this store and support himself and his younger sister since he was 12 years old. He had to support his younger sister's schooling, and Auntie Zhang couldn't remember if it had been 6 or 7 years. When Lin Yuan brought the usnea vines to the counter, he happened to see Auntie Zhang looking at him. "Auntie Zhang, if I open the store at 8 a.m., you won't be able to buy such fresh usnea vines, right?" Auntie Zhang quickly withdrew the emotions in her eyes and smiled. "That's true. Why don't you learn from the stores outside? You also put energy ores in the usneas. How much can you earn from 1 usnea vine?" When Lin Yuan heard Auntie Zhang's words, he shook his head with a smile and didn't say anything. At that moment, Lin Yuan was completely supporting his body. The dizziness in his head was so intense that Lin Yuan felt that he could collapse at any moment. Auntie Zhang understood that this youth in front of her had his own persistence. Whether it was opening the store at 7 a.m. every day, or stubbornly adding energy ores in the usnea soil, Auntie Zhang felt heartache. As a child that she had watched grow up, Auntie Zhang had a faint admiration in her heart. It was just like how a senior would look at a promising junior. Auntie Zhang left 75 yuan and turned to walk towards the door. She said as she left. When she was leaving, she said, "Little Yuan, this is the sesame seed cake and soy milk that your Uncle Li specially baked for you for breakfast. If you want to make your Uncle Li sad, then don't eat it." Lin Yuan saw that the 75 yuan on the table had an additional 25 yuan. Just as Lin Yuan was about to call out to Auntie Zhang, the dizziness in his head intensified, and his vision blurred before he fainted. Suddenly, the dizziness in his head intensified, and his vision blurred before he fainted. When Auntie Zhang left, she was feeling rather pleased. Every time she gave little Yuan money, he wouldn't accept it. This time, she was going to leave first, and she believed that little Yuan would accept the money. But just as she reached the store's entrance, she heard a thud, and it was the sound of something falling on the ground. When the sound of something falling echoed, she heard the anxious cries of the sound bird and the 100 questions beast. Auntie Zhang quickly turned around and noticed that Lin Yuan was holding the 25 yuan and falling on the ground. He was quietly closing his eyes, and there was a faint expression on his face as though he was asleep. Auntie Zhang quickly ran over and helped Lin Yuan up. The instant before Lin Yuan fainted and closed his eyes, he could vaguely hear Genius, Chimy, and Auntie Zhang's anxious cries. Then his consciousness sank into a state of dizziness. This dizziness was like a swamp that made it hard for one to wade through. It was chaotic and sticky, and it was dead silent. After fainting, Lin Yuan felt as though he was gradually awakening in this dizziness. His younger sister's face, Genius, and Chimy's face flashed in his mind. The three of them were his kin and his fetters. If he were to die, he didn't know how sad his younger sister would be. He also didn't know who would take care of Chimy and Genius. Fortunately, he had saved up for his younger sister's tuition fees for next year. Lin Yuan's consciousness wandered in this chaotic consciousness for an unknown period of time. All of a sudden, at the end of the depths of his consciousness, Lin Yuan saw something that couldn't be more familiar. It was a simple and unadorned copper ring. This ring had always been Lin Yuan's secret, and this life was actually Lin Yuan's second life. In his previous life, he had been high-spirited and at the prime of his life, but he had died at an untimely age of 30. When he opened his eyes again, he was already an infant that had just been born 100 years after the spirit Qi awakening. Accompanying his birth was this simple and unadorned copper ring. This ring had been on his wrist ever since he was young. However, when he was 8 years old, it had strangely vanished after he had accidentally stained it with his blood. He didn't expect to discover this simple and unadorned copper ring in the depths of his consciousness. The copper ring was currently flickering with a faint light, causing the depths of his consciousness to be filled with a faint, rippling tawny color. Chapter 3. This kind of summoning was invisible and formless, but it was the most essential compatibility. It was as though fate had guided Newton to the apple tree, and the apple tree had coincidentally dropped an apple. When Lin Yuan's consciousness stepped into this simple and unadorned scarlet bronze halo, at that instant, the simple and unadorned scarlet bronze halo lit up with mottled and complicated patterns. These patterns were strange and intertwined, but they had an indescribable spirituality. Lin Yuan felt an indescribable sense of relaxation after passing through this simple and unadorned halo. This relaxation was because Lin Yuan could actually feel the world's spirit Qi filling up his body. It was a feeling that Lin Yuan had never felt since the scarlet bronze halo had vanished with his blood when he had been 8 years old. The disappearance of this scarlet halo had not only taken away his sense of the world's spirit Qi, but it had also taken away his spiritual energy. Although his spiritual energy was still as dry as before, he could at least feel the world's spirit Qi. His body was so weak because his body could not feel the world's spirit Qi. After the spirit Qi awakening, spirit Qi had become this world's most essential energy. The planet's native animals and plants had evolved in two directions under the influence of spirit Qi. One was wild atavism, which enhanced the physical body's energy. The other was spirituality mutation, which focused on energy attacks. Humans had also evolved spirit Qi occupations under the spirit Qi. There were many types of spirit Qi occupations, but they all used spirit Qi to strengthen the body. Since Lin Yuan could not feel the world's spirit Qi at the age of 8, he had never diverted the spirit Qi to enhance his body's host. He only relied on natural growth and the energy he absorbed from food. Lin Yuan could not help but feel a little excited. Even if his body was unable to store spirit Qi for some unknown reason, he could at least feel the existence of spirit Qi. He might be able to absorb spirit Qi at a horrifying speed, but the spirit Qi that gathered in his body would rapidly flow out of his hands. His body was like a funnel, and Lin Yuan knew that he was destined to be unable to become a spirit Qi professional. Even so, when the spirit Qi washed through his body, even if all the spirit Qi flowed out, it would undoubtedly increase his body's toughness. Once the spirit Qi passed through his body, it would undoubtedly increase his physical strength. This way, he would no longer need to take those pills to maintain his physical strength. This way, he would be able to save a lot of money in a year. His younger sister was almost at the age where she could form a contract with her first fae. The money he had saved could be used to buy a superior normal fae for his younger sister. It could even be used to buy a low-grade elite fae. My body can finally feel spiritual Qi. Although, he did not continue to say the rest of the sentence. Lin Yuan had always been an optimistic person, but he was regretful that his body could sense spirit Qi. However, his mental power was still the same as before, just a tiny sliver. Mental strength was an existence that was as important as spirit energy 100 years after the spirit energy awakening. Spirit chi occupations could form phase that were categorized into healing type, offense type, defense type, and support type phase. Among them, offense type and support type phase were the most diverse. Forming a contract with these phase required spiritual energy. An ordinary person would be able to contract 2 to 3 phase in their lifetime. Some genius experts could even contract up to 5 phase. With each additional contracted phase, his strength would increase exponentially. However, the resources required to nurture a phase were also considerable. For phase, the most difficult thing was to evolve. The resources required for each evolution weren't something that a person like Lin Yuan, who ran a small phase store to make a living, could afford. Lin Yuan's hair-thin and weak spiritual energy had caused him to be unconscious for 3 days and 3 nights when he formed a contract with house-type phase like the 100 Questions Beast and the Sound Bird. After waking up, Lin Yuan would have a splitting headache for at least half a month. This allowed Lin Yuan to have a direct understanding of the weakness of his spiritual energy. When he had just been born, his spiritual energy might not be outstanding, but it wasn't weak either. The weakness of his spiritual energy had also happened at the same time when he couldn't sense heaven and earth. The weakness of his spiritual energy was probably due to this copper hoop. This copper hoop had transmigrated into this world together with him, but it had also turned him into a weak wastrel. Lin Yuan couldn't help but have a rather complicated view of the copper hoop. At that moment, Lin Yuan felt that he was stepping on hard ground. He looked up and saw that he was in a space that was about 40 square meters. In this 40 square meters space, the ground was copper in color, and on this 40 square meters of copper-colored ground, there was a pool of about 5 to 6 square meters. Apart from that, there was nothing else. Lin Yuan walked to the side of the pool, and the water in the pool was very clear, reflecting a youth's face. This pool wasn't deep, and it was only about half a meter. Lin Yuan squatted down and scooped up a handful of the water in the pool. He felt that the water in the pool was warm, and when he sniffed it, he realized that the water in the pool was ordinary water and didn't contain spirit chi. Just as he was thinking, Lin Yuan felt his wrist sink, and he realized that his wrist was wrapped around that simple copper hoop. At that moment, the copper hoop emitted a trace of willingness to communicate with him. This willingness to communicate seemed to have hope, attachment, and a trace of timidity and ignorance. It was like a child that had just gained intelligence. When Lin Yuan used his consciousness to collide with this copper hoop, all the things that he didn't understand since he was 8 years old were completely solved. It turns out that this copper hoop that transmigrated with me is actually a fae. When I was 8 years old, I accidentally stained this copper hoop with my blood, causing me to form a contract with this copper hoop. I actually formed a contract with a fae when I was 8 years old. Lin Yuan was in disbelief. He used his left hand to touch the copper hoop on his right hand, and felt a sense of peace in this precarious situation. I am also a person with a contracted fae, and I might be able to earn even more money in the future. My younger sister's contracted fae might no longer be at normal or elite grade. If I work hard, will I be able to exchange for a bronze fae for my younger sister? Only when a fae reaches bronze could it be considered a true fae to a certain extent. Previously, Lin Yuan had complicated thoughts about this copper hoop, but after the collision of thoughts, Lin Yuan knew why his spiritual energy was only left with a trace to allow him to live normally for the past 10 years. He also knew why this copper hoop had been silent for 10 years without any news. It was because this copper hoop had chosen to sleep to protect his weak spiritual energy when he was 8 years old. It had slowly formed a contract while sleeping, and this contract had been formed for 10 years. Today was the day that this copper hoop would awaken. Sensing that Lin Yuan's emotions were fluctuating, the scarlet hoop on his right wrist transmitted a gentle emotion. This gentle emotion was like a kind of comfort or spiritual hint, allowing Lin Yuan's emotions to calm down. When this copper hoop sensed that Lin Yuan's thoughts had calmed down, it tightened and firmly fixed itself on Lin Yuan's right wrist. It was as though it was holding Lin Yuan's hand tightly, as though it was saying, "Lin Yuan, please give me your guidance." The corner of Lin Yuan's mouth revealed a smile. The sunlight was like the dawn that broke through the darkness and illuminated the outline of the distant mountain. The youth's voice was deep and gentle. Chapter 4. No matter what kind of fae it was, even if it was a normal fae, after forming a contract with a human, it would have a binding ability. Most of these abilities were innate abilities of the species. Take the jasmine lily as an example. Even if a normal jasmine lily was contracted, it would still have the same healing ability. Of course, this kind of comprehended ability was also the most basic species ability. In order for a fae to truly grasp a powerful ability, the fae would have to evolve to bronze grade and awaken an exclusive skill. Then, by matching the skill with the fae's ability, the ability's power would undergo a drastic change. This was also why bronze grade was the true starting point of a fae. Therefore, any spirit chi professional with a bit of wealth would choose a bronze grade fae when forming a contract with it. When a fae reached bronze grade, even if it was a fae of the same species, the awakened bronze grade ability would be different. This was also why spirit chi professionals were more willing to choose to form a contract with a fae whose awakened ability was compatible with them or beneficial to them. Forming a contract with a fae required spiritual energy, and it was actually an invisible fusion of the fae's soul and the user's soul. Therefore, once the contract was formed, it would be extremely difficult to remove it. This was also why many experts formed contracts with low-grade faes, due to limited resources. Even if they became stronger in the later stages, they wouldn't choose to change to low-grade faes. Instead, they would use resources to induce low-grade faes to evolve. Lin Yuan was currently carefully observing Morbius, wanting to check its fae's attributes. Currently, Morbius' spirituality could only express subtle emotions. If he wanted to communicate with Morbius normally, he would need some time to recover. During the process of checking Morbius' attributes, Lin Yuan realized that Morbius was only at the lowest normal fae. However, Morbius' attributes were completely different from normal faes. Not only did Morbius have abilities, but it also had an exclusive skill. Exclusive skills were something that only bronze faes could possess. Oh my god, my contracted fae Morbius seems rather powerful. Lin Yuan's eyes widened as he was rather shocked. Morbius, which had come to this world at the same time as him, already possessed an exclusive skill at normal. If it awakened another exclusive skill at bronze grade, it would be a double exclusive skill. That was a legendary ability that only faes that had been nurtured into fantasy breeds would have. Fantasy breeds had always been legends, and Lin Yuan had yet to come into contact with such knowledge. However, fantasy breed faes and ordinary faes were obviously not on the same level of life anymore. After the shock, Lin Yuan was delighted. At that moment, he felt a wave of emotions coming from Morbius. It wanted him to use the first ability on Morbius. After receiving Morbius' request, Lin Yuan used Morbius' first ability. After using it, Lin Yuan intuitively discovered that all of Morbius' information existed in the form of data. Fae name: Morbius spirit species : Fae grade: normal 1/10 Fae type. Spatial/mystery quality of comprehension: normal skills frowny face true data. Convert all complex information that cannot be discerned by the naked eye into data. Information that is digitized may contain the truth that cannot be discerned on the surface. Calm mind. Passive ability. The effect of calm mind can be strengthened according to the fae's grade. Calm mind can stabilize the mind and has a certain probability of resisting negative states. Exclusive skill frowny face spirit lock. Morbius spatial zone can nurture faes. The initial grade of the fae that Morbius spatial zone nurtures cannot be higher than Morbius grade. Morbius itself cannot level up, and its grade will increase along with the fae that it nurtures. At the same time, it can obtain the initial abilities of the fae that it nurtures. However, Morbius itself will not obtain abilities when it levels up. Every time Morbius increases a grade, it will be able to nurture one more fae. At the same time, Morbius' upgrade method will remain unchanged. When Lin Yuan saw the true data that was reflected in Morbius's digitization, His smile froze on his face. The smile froze on his face for a moment, and Lin Yuan sent a message to Morbius while trembling. After receiving Morbius' confirmation, Lin Yuan nearly collapsed. This is too much of a scam, isn't there? Morbius is now a normal I/normal Fae, so I can only use Spirit Lock to form a contract with a normal I/normal Fae. Putting aside the amount of resources required to nurture such a Fae, my spiritual energy won't allow me to form a contract with even a normal Fae. Although the Fae would eventually live in Morbius' spatial zone, the contract still had to rely on himself. Lin Yuan still had a shadow in his heart from the tragedy of contracting housekeeping beasts, Chimey and Genius. The most terrifying thing was that after each evolution, Morbius' Spirit Lock spatial zone would be able to contract an additional Fae. Morbius would only continue to evolve if the Fae was nurtured. Such an effort would only be rewarded with the contracted Fae's basic abilities. The investment and return were not proportional. Why was it so difficult for Faes to evolve, especially low-grade Faes? Where did he get the ability to allow low-grade Faes to constantly evolve? Even a wealthy tycoon would be emptied out by Spirit Lock's special characteristic, let alone someone like Lin Yuan, who was even cleaner than his face. The joy of obtaining his own contracted Fae was quickly replaced by the feeling of not knowing what to do. However, Lin Yuan's optimistic attitude quickly adjusted. He was much better than before. Although the road ahead was still full of obstacles and thorns, the road was made by stepping on it. At the very least, he could see the direction of the road ahead. There was no need to be at a loss. I hope that the past cannot be chased, and the future will be bright and resplendent. Just as Lin Yuan was changing his attitude, a slightly weak spiritual energy was transmitted from the Morbius strip into his brain. The hair-like spiritual energy in his brain had increased by more than 5 times. Even so, it wasn't as thick as a hair and wasn't even 1/10 of a normal person's. However, this spiritual energy should be enough to contract a normal I/normal Fae plant. If it was an animal, this amount of spiritual energy wouldn't be enough. According to common sense, a contracted animal's spiritual energy would usually be slightly stronger than a Fae plant's. Unless he could obtain an oviparous animal's egg. When the eggshell was broken, it would be when the animal's spiritual energy was at its most ignorant. After receiving the spiritual energy feedback, Lin Yuan immediately felt Morbius' weakness. Morbius was compressing the mental strength that it occupied, and the mental strength that was squeezed over was given to itself. It was said that Faes had spirits, and all the contracted Faes would choose one person for life. Lin Yuan hadn't experienced it in the past, but Morbius' actions allowed Lin Yuan to fully understand the meaning of this sentence. Chapter 5. After sensing that Morbius had given him the spiritual energy, it fell into a deep slumber again. He carefully sized up the space he was in. This space should be the space to nurture Faes mentioned in the Spirit Lock special ability. Before Lin Yuan could take a closer look, he vaguely heard a familiar shout that had an anxious emotion. Why hasn't little Yuan woken up yet? Doctor, didn't you say that your mind was stimulated and is showing signs of weakness? Why hasn't he recovered after half a day? It was Auntie Zhang's voice, and she was asking 3 questions anxiously. Lin Yuan, meow meow. It was the voice of the 100 Questions Beast, Genius. The 100 Questions Beast could speak the human language, but it would subconsciously let out beast sounds when it was anxious. Chirp, chirp, chirp. Chirp, chirp, chirp. The sound bird Chimey was also calling out anxiously. It seemed like Lin Yuan's sudden dizziness had frightened Auntie Zhang, Genius and Chimey. At that moment, Lin Yuan's consciousness finally returned to his body. When he opened his eyes, he saw Chimey standing on his nose and staring at him anxiously. Auntie Zhang was looking at the doctor and asking questions one after another, causing the doctor's forehead to be covered in sweat. Lin Yuan's sudden opening of his eyes had obviously frightened Chimey. Chimey was startled and chirped twice before it immediately reacted. It happily bounced around Lin Yuan's nose and chirped happily. Genius also scuttled to Lin Yuan's neck and carefully rubbed against it. Perhaps it had been frightened earlier, but it was now resting on Lin Yuan's neck and was trembling slightly. Auntie Zhang had obviously heard Chimey and Genius voices. When she turned around, She happened to see Lin Yuan opening his eyes. She couldn't be bothered with the doctor's questions anymore. When she saw that Lin Yuan was about to get up, she immediately said, "Little Yuan, lie down again. I will get the doctor to give you another checkup. You have been unconscious for close to 10 hours, and you only woke up in the evening. If you are sick, you have to treat it as soon as possible. Otherwise, a small illness will become a serious illness." Auntie Zhang's concern warmed Lin Yuan's heart. He had received plenty of care from Auntie Zhang in the past few years. But Lin Yuan knew that there was nothing wrong with his body. He had fainted because Morbius had awakened, and he had signed a contract with it. Auntie Zhang was still worried. Just as she was about to say something, the doctor who was standing at the side walked over. "Kid, your aunt is worried sick. I'll use the clear pond carp to treat you again." After speaking, the doctor summoned his contracted fae, which was a half-foot-long greenish-black carp. The side of the carp had huge scales, and when the doctor activated the ability, the crystalline scales fell off and floated in front of Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan felt his spiritual world was warm and very comfortable. At that moment, he quietly used Morbius True Data to check the clear pond carp's attributes. Fae name: Clear pond carp spirit species, carp/carp fae grade, elite/for fae type, water comprehension grade, excellent skills frowny face tail whip. Jump and use the fish tail to whip. Clear scales, slightly recovers mental injuries, and can alleviate abnormal mental states. After looking at the clear pond carp's attributes, Lin Yuan felt that this was a normal fae's attributes, and it was an elite fae. After looking at the attributes, Lin Yuan felt that this doctor was very lucky. The clear pond carp was a very ordinary water-type fae, and its fixed ability at normal was either tail whip or fin flap. However, when this clear pond carp evolved to elite, it had awakened the rare ability Clear Scales. It was the same as leaping through the Dragon's Gate and obtaining the uncommon mental healing ability. The doctor's forehead was now covered in sweat. When the clear pond carp's fallen scales had completely lost their luster, the doctor stopped his actions, and the detached scales had turned into ashes. "It's nothing serious. Pay attention to rest and replenish more nutrients. You will recover soon." The doctor was about to use his sleeve to wipe the sweat on his forehead, but Auntie Zhang handed him a tissue and said, "Doctor, it has been hard on you." "Doctor, thank you for your hard work. Wipe your sweat." The doctor took the tissue and said, "After the treatment, I will be leaving first. It is getting late, and my wife is still waiting for me to return home for dinner." After that, he picked up the things he brought and walked out of the shop. When he left, although his forehead was sweating, the doctor's eyes were filled with joy. Although he was only a junior doctor, he had gained a lot of joy from saving lives and helping the injured. After the doctor left, Auntie Zhang looked at Lin Yuan with concern and said, "Little Yuan, if you are not feeling well, don't force yourself. Little Yuan, don't force yourself if you're not feeling well. Your body is your capital. Otherwise, what will happen to little CI if your body collapses?" Auntie Zhang was afraid that Lin Yuan would not take care of his body, so she specially mentioned Lin Yuan's younger sister, who was studying far away. "Auntie Zhang, don't worry. I will withdraw the money tomorrow and return the medical fees to you. I am really sorry for troubling you for the entire day." Lin Yuan's expression was sincere, and he had already stood up when he spoke. When he saw that the usnea had grown vines that were almost 3 meters long, Lin Yuan let out a sigh and poured a cup of water for Auntie Zhang. "Little Yuan, don't be so courteous with me. Your Uncle Li and I have watched you grow up." Auntie Zhang took the cup and drank the water in one gulp before burping. She was so anxious today that she did not even have time to drink a mouthful of water. After drinking the water, Auntie Zhang saw that Lin Yuan insisted and did not say anything else. She knew that this youth always had his own persistence. When Lin Yuan saw that Auntie Zhang had finished the water in the cup, he was about to pour another cup of water for her. At that moment, Auntie Zhang waved her hand. "Little Yuan, give me a pot of jasmine lily. I will place it at your Uncle Li's bedside when we return home." After speaking, Auntie Zhang took out 500 yuan and placed it in Lin Yuan's hand. Lin Yuan looked at the 500 yuan in his hand and said helplessly, "Auntie Zhang, You buy a pot of jasmine lily every other month. Sometimes you buy a pot in less than a month. You really don't need. Before Lin Yuan could finish his sentence, Auntie Zhang interrupted him and said, "Can't I have a few more pots at home?" Lin Yuan had no choice but to get the jasmine lily for Auntie Zhang. Lin Yuan chose the pot that was growing the best. At that moment, Auntie Zhang was already hugging the jasmine lily that had turned soft and wouldn't last for a few more days. This pot then. It is the most pleasing to the eye. Seeing how Auntie Zhang was hugging the jasmine lily, Lin Yuan's heart surged with warmth. It was the same every time. The same tone, the same expression, and the same jasmine lily. All of a sudden, there was a thud 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 sound. A rabbit that was the size of a medium-sized dog ran in from the door. It had maroon and black fur and looked like a mouse. This rabbit had 2 massive ears that were like cattail leaf fans, and each ear was almost as long as its body. Upon hearing the sound, Genius and Chimey quickly rushed to the door. Genius immediately lay on the large rabbit's body, while Chimey landed on the large rabbit's head. This large rabbit was Auntie Zhang's contracted fae. It was also Genius and Chimey's only spirit beast friend in the past 2 years. The large rabbit ran in front of Auntie Zhang, and one of its ears was wrapped in a blue cloth. Chapter 6. Because he had obtained a new ability, he was naturally very curious. He subconsciously looked at Auntie Zhang's terror rabbit, which had been living beside him. He discovered that under true data, this terror rabbit was no longer a terror rabbit. This terror rabbit's appearance was just a powerful fae's mimicry. However, under true data, this powerful fae was seriously injured and in a critical state. This powerful fae's abilities and characteristics were all in a locked state. It seemed like this fae's injuries weren't enough for it to release any abilities. However, this was not what surprised Lin Yuan the most. What shocked him the most was that he saw that there were actually dual characteristics inside the locked characteristics. Could it be the legendary fantasy breed? This made Lin Yuan think of True Data's introduction. The digitized information might contain the truth that couldn't be distinguished on the surface. It seemed that digitized information was indeed more reliable than what one could see with their eyes. This discovery shocked Lin Yuan. It seemed that Auntie Zhang was also a person with a story. But who doesn't have a story? All of these weren't important. To Lin Yuan, Auntie Zhang was still Auntie Zhang. If he had the ability, he would definitely help Auntie Zhang heal this powerful fae that had mimicked the terror rabbit. When Auntie Zhang saw that Lin Yuan's complexion wasn't pale, and was even more rosy than when she had seen him in the morning, she was relieved. She took the blue cloth bag from the terror rabbit's ear and placed it on Lin Yuan's counter. "Little Yuan, this is the nutritious meal that your Uncle Li specially made for you after knowing that you fainted. Your Uncle Li's legs are inconvenient, so he couldn't personally deliver it to you. So he sent this troublemaker to deliver it to you." After saying that, Auntie Zhang touched the terror rabbit's ears and looked at it with a warm expression. She handed the lunchbox to Lin Yuan and waved her hand. Without waiting for Lin Yuan to speak, she carried the pot of jasmine lily that wasn't in good condition and left without looking back. Lin Yuan didn't say anything and quietly watched Auntie Zhang's back view as she left. He clenched his fists as though he was cheering himself on and seemed to have made up his mind. Everyone had to carry some burden. Otherwise, how could they move forward as firm as a rock if they did not carry a burden? The sky gradually darkened, and only Lin Yuan, Chimey, and Genius were left in the store. Although there weren't many customers, the shop wasn't deserted. On the contrary, it was very lively and warm. Genius and Chimey still had lingering fear as they chattered around Lin Yuan, afraid that something might happen to him. Lin Yuan knew that Chimey and Genius were worried sick, so he extended his hand and gently scratched Genius' chin. Soon enough, Genius let out a snort of enjoyment. Chimey's little claw grabbed onto Lin Yuan's ear and stood on it. Its little head burrowed into Lin Yuan's hair, as though it was playing hide-and-seek. Lin Yuan opened the blue cloth bag, and there was a bamboo food box inside. When he opened the food box, he saw that the top layer of the food box was filled with rice. He removed the rice from the top layer, and the bottom layer was red braised meat, roasted beans, and fried fish. When Lin Yuan opened the food box, the aroma wafted out. Lin Yuan had been unconscious for an entire day and had not eaten anything, so his stomach could not help but grumble. This wasn't the first time Lin Yuan had eaten Uncle Li's cooking. Every few days, Uncle Li would find all sorts of reasons to get the terror rabbit or Auntie Zhang to deliver food to him. Last year, when Lin Yuan had seen Uncle Li, his leg injuries had worsened, and he couldn't even leave the house now. When thinking about the terror rabbit, Lin Yuan was afraid that Uncle Li and Auntie Zhang were also experts. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to possess a fantasy breed fae with dual characteristics. Lin Yuan didn't know about Auntie Zhang and Uncle Li's story, so he couldn't participate in it. He only hoped that one day, when he was strong enough, he would be able to heal the terror rabbit and Uncle Li's leg injuries. When Lin Yuan opened the food box, Genius and Chimey came over. Chimey sniffed the aroma in the food box and flapped its wings to fly onto a small pot of usnea. This small pot of usnea was specially set aside by Lin Yuan. Chimey was a sound bird and was considered an omnivore. However, Chimey preferred to eat usnea leaves as compared to cooked human food. Chimey was happily pecking at the usnea leaves, while Genius was looking at the food in the food box and squatting there obediently. When Lin Yuan saw Genius staring at the red braised meat in the food box, the corner of his mouth curled up into a smile. He picked up the largest piece of red braised meat in the food box and handed it to Genius. "Eat up, little greedy cat." Genius stared at the large piece of red braised meat and constantly swallowed its saliva. However, it extended its small paw and pushed the large piece of red braised meat in front of Lin Yuan. It then pointed at the smallest piece of red braised meat in the food box and meowed. It meant for Lin Yuan to eat the big one while it ate the small one. The 100 Questions Beast's action caused Lin Yuan's eyes to involuntarily feel a little hot. He took a small bowl and picked up a few pieces of red braised meat and fish. He then scooped a spoonful of rice and stirred it together before placing it in front of the 100 Questions Beast. "Genius, Chimey, we will eat well in the future." For the past 2 years, the 100 Questions Beast and the sound bird had suffered a lot with him. In the past, Lin Yuan would never be able to say such words as he didn't have the confidence. But now, he had a contracted fae, and his body could sense spirit chi. He wouldn't be as weak as before, and his life in the future would at least be better than it was now. The sky was covered with layers of clouds, but how many people's lofty sentiments had caused the clouds in the sky to be exiled to the heavens? A youth's aspirations were like the 4 seas, and Lin Yuan now had to plan for his future. Otherwise, he would still be an ordinary person among ordinary people after many years. After dinner, Lin Yuan carefully checked on the remaining 4 pots of jasmine lilies in his house as usual. These 4 pots of jasmine lilies were growing rather well. After checking on the jasmine lilies' growth, Lin Yuan looked at Genius, which was perched on his shoulder. "Genius, what is the current temperature?" Genius quickly replied, "Lin Yuan, the current temperature is 31 degrees Celsius. However, the humidity is too heavy. I do not recommend giving the jasmine lilies additional light at night." In response, Lin Yuan placed down the fluorescent lamp and black cloth and used a pair of scissors to trim the usneas. The usneas weren't sold today, and the usneas vines were already over 3 meters long. After growing for 2 days, the taste of the vines was a little old, and many herbivorous fays didn't like to eat such old vines. Lin Yuan had his own insistence on the quality of the fays he sold. For old vines like these, Lin Yuan could only discard them and wouldn't sell them. When Lin Yuan was trimming the last pot of usneas, he recalled that he might be able to sense the world's spirit chi, but he wasn't able to store it in his body. He couldn't help but let out a sigh. His body was rapidly absorbing the world's spirit chi, but Lin Yuan's hand was still holding onto the usnea leaf. After circulating it for a moment, Lin Yuan felt a little tired and stopped absorbing the world's spirit chi. However, Lin Yuan realized that his body still didn't store any spirit chi in the end. Genius could feel Lin Yuan's disappointment, so it rubbed against Lin Yuan's cheek and meowed. It didn't say anything and just silently accompanied him. Lin Yuan carried Genius and carefully picked up Chimey, which had started to doze off after dinner, from the usnea vine. He switched off the lights and walked up the stairs in the dark. When he was upstairs, he collapsed on the bed and entered dreamland. The night was as tranquil as water. On a small bed, a youth, 100 questions beast, and a sound bird were sleeping peacefully. Chapter 7. The Xia region was a small city in the southeast of Redbud City. Due to its proximity to the sea, the weather here had always been rainy, and it was rare to see the sun a few times a month. However, when the sky was about to break, the first rays of dawn would slowly shine in all directions from the east, dyeing half the sky red. It was rare for the Xia region to have such good weather, and soon enough, the sky was no longer that misty light. Instead, the entire sky was as blue as the sea, and it was so blue that it was comfortable. The light shone through the window and into the room, shining on Lin Yuan's closed eyes. With a flash of the light, Lin Yuan gradually woke up from his sleep. After waking up, Lin Yuan felt his body relaxing. It wasn't like before, where his body would still feel sore and fatigued after resting. It seemed like the ability to sense the spirit qi of heaven and earth, or Morbius feedback on his spiritual energy, had strengthened his spiritual energy. His body's constitution was already incomparable to yesterday. When Lin Yuan took a look at his cell phone, it was almost 6 o'clock. Lin Yuan felt a little strange. Chimey and Genius were like his alarm clocks, especially Genius. Every day at 5 o'clock, it would naturally wake up. But today, Genius was still in a deep sleep. Lin Yuan got up and was about to wake Genius and Chimey up when he noticed that Genius and Chimey, who were sleeping beside him, were piled up with a layer of shed fur. Beside Genius was a pile of grayish-black and messy fur, while beside Chimey was a small tuft of dull green feathers. Lin Yuan suddenly became nervous. Could Chimey and Genius have gotten sick? Lin Yuan subconsciously used Morbius' ability, True Data. However, Lin Yuan realized that he could actually see Genius and Chimey's data. Yesterday, when Lin Yuan used True Data to observe the clear pond carp, he had observed Genius and Chimey. However, True Data didn't display their data. Be it a housekeeping beast like the 100 questions beast, or a sound bird that had failed to evolve into a songstress bird, they couldn't be considered fays. This was because they couldn't even reach the standard of a normal fae. But now, with True Data's data, be it Genius or Chimey, they were actually normal fays. This subverted the knowledge that Lin Yuan had learned in this world for over a decade. The 100 questions beast and sound bird were considered housekeeping beasts, and almost everyone had one. He had never heard of a 100 questions beast or sound bird evolving into a fae. In fact, even if the sound bird evolved into a songstress bird, it wouldn't be qualified to be called a normal fae. However, the two little fellows beside him had both evolved. Lin Yuan couldn't understand it, but he didn't wake Genius and Chimey up immediately. Instead, he carefully tidied up Genius and Chimey's fallen feathers before heading out for morning training. In the past, Lin Yuan's spiritual energy had been weak, and just living had exhausted his strength. Now that his previous shortcomings had been improved, Lin Yuan decided to train his body well, as a good body was the capital of everything. An hour of running and stopping in the morning. After returning, Lin Yuan couldn't even breathe steadily. After all, his body's foundation was still too weak. It's the first day of exercise, and I'm really not used to it. But if it's just jogging, I can't reduce the amount of exercise. I have to persist. Lin Yuan swung his fist to encourage himself. After taking a shower, he noticed that Genius and Chimey were still asleep, and Genius was still snoring softly. Lin Yuan carefully drew the curtains that hadn't been closed for a long time, and closed the door on the second floor. He then went downstairs and prepared to open the store. Right at that moment, Lin Yuan noticed that one of the pots of usneas on the shelf in the corner was actually different from the other usneas. The color of this usnea had turned from tender green to dark green. The vines that grew out were twice the thickness of the regular usneas, and the leaves looked thicker. This usnea had actually evolved in a single night. Lin Yuan used True Data to check, and realized that the previously invisible usnea could now see the data. Fae name: Usnea Fae species, Araceae/Philodendron genus Fae grade. Normal 3 out of 10, Fae type, grass Fae quality. Elite. The quality isn't actually normal but elite. Lin Yuan couldn't help but exclaim, "This is truly incredible, my usnea." Not only did this usnea evolve, but its quality had also advanced. Lin Yuan felt that this world was simply too mystical. The usnea might be considered as nutritious food for herbivorous fays, and there were also high-grade usneas, but they were all nurtured using energy stones and other fays. Lin Yuan didn't have any energy stones to nurture the usneas. When he thought about genius and Chinese evolution, he noticed that only the usneas that he had touched yesterday had evolved. The rest of the usneas were still the same, and didn't have any changes. These fays that he had touched when he had absorbed the spirit qi had all evolved. Lin Yuan's mind had a bold and unrealistic thought. Could it be that when I absorb the spirit qi, I'm not completely a funnel? Instead, I can conduct the spirit qi into my body to help the fays evolve and even improve their quality. While thinking about it, Lin Yuan couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. It was extremely difficult for fays to evolve, and there were countless fays that were stuck at the same grade for their entire lives, unable to evolve. It was precisely because of the difficulty of evolving fays that the creation master occupation was especially respected among the spirit qi occupations. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that it was the most respected occupation in the world. Among the spirit qi occupations, there were combat class spirit qi occupations and lifestyle class spirit qi occupations. The combat class spirit qi occupations were further divided into power offense class, agility class, defense class, support class, and healing class. These spirit qi occupations were mainly differentiated by the fays that the spirit qi professionals had contracted. This was because every spirit qi professional had an innate affinity with the fae. When sensing the fae, they would know which fae they were leaning towards. If the fae wasn't leaning towards the fae, even if the spirit qi professional had the spiritual energy, it would be extremely difficult to form a contract. In fact, the spirit qi professional might even suffer spiritual energy damage. Among the combat class spirit qi occupations, healing class spirit qi occupations were the rarest. There might not even be one healing class spirit qi professional among 100 spirit qi professionals. There were all sorts of lifestyle class spirit qi occupations, but among the lifestyle class spirit qi occupations, the creation master was the most respected. If a combat class spirit qi professional wanted a fae to evolve and improve its quality, apart from a small probability of the fae evolving naturally, the only way was to seek help from a creation master. Chapter 8. Becoming a creation master was as difficult as ascending to heaven. However, Lin Yuan was now able to reach the level of a creation master just by channeling spirit qi. In fact, it might even be more effective than a creation master's methods. Creation masters used a variety of medicinal ingredients to induce fays to evolve, but there was a possibility of failure during the evolution process. However, Lin Yuan was just channeling spirit qi into the fae through his hands, and he was able to induce the fae to evolve and increase its quality. This was truly a godlike method. The evolution of fays was actually the same as a seriously ill person consuming medicine. No matter how much medicine a seriously ill person consumed, they wouldn't be able to absorb the medicinal effects. A creation master's evolution of fays was just like treating a seriously ill person. The patient wouldn't be able to absorb the medicinal effects, but a creation master would use a variety of medicinal ingredients to allow the patient to absorb the medicinal effects. However, Lin Yuan had simplified everything and used the most fundamental method. Using his own body as a medium, he was able to channel the spirit qi in the world through his body, allowing the fae to absorb and evolve. Not only did he not need to consume precious ingredients like a creation master, but based on the condition of that pot of usnea, it didn't seem like it would take a long time to evolve its grade. "I'm rich," Lin Yuan muttered to himself with an expression that was overflowing with excitement. However, at the same time, Lin Yuan knew how appalling his method was. Therefore, in order to conceal his method, Lin Yuan had to pass the creation master's test and obtain the qualifications to become a creation master. However, these were just Lin Yuan's current deductions. Therefore, Lin Yuan didn't open the store for business in the morning. Instead, he experimented with the remaining usneas. Each pot would take 5 minutes, just like last night. In the end, After a few hours, all 20 pots of usneas had turned into normal and elite phase, just like that pot of dark green usneas. Among the 4 pots of jasmine lilies, Lin Yuan gritted his teeth and channeled his body to rapidly convert the spirit qi of heaven and earth for 1 hour. The center of the originally emerald green jasmine lily's petals had become even more verdant. It was as though half of the verdant jasmine lily's leaves were gathered at the tip of the petals, making the jasmine lily look extraordinary. This meant that this jasmine lily had evolved into elite Fey name, jasmine lily Fey species, Crassulaceae/lotus palms Fey grade, elite, 1 out of 10, Fey type, wood quality of comprehension, normal skills frowny face heals external wounds. Fragrance. The faint and refreshing fragrance of plants can ease one's nervousness. The elite grade ability, fragrant, was considered a very common ability for flower species phase. The effect would increase along with the grade, and there was nothing special about it. However, Lin Yuan noticed that the jasmine lily's basic ability heal had changed. At normal rank, heal would slowly heal external wounds. After evolving to elite rank, heal's effect had been strengthened. When looking at this elite jasmine lily, Lin Yuan was in a daze. As a basic healing type Fey, the jasmine lily's selling price was already 500 yuan per pot. This was because Lin Yuan had sold it at a lower price. In some large Fey stores, a normal jasmine lily that was growing well would be priced at over 700 yuan. Once a normal jasmine lily evolved to elite, its price would increase by 10 times. It was just like the jasmine lily in Lin Yuan's hands. Although the elite-grade jasmine lily's abilities were quite average, they were extremely powerful. However, if it were to be sold on the market for 5,000 yuan, it would probably be bought by people immediately. Feys had always been rather expensive. Take Lin Yuan's store as an example. The store only had 5 pots of jasmine lilies, which were normal jasmine lilies. After staring blankly for a moment, and experimenting with over 20 pots of normal usneas and elite jasmine lilies, Lin Yuan was certain of his ability. His body might not be able to preserve spirit qi, but he wasn't useless. He could evolve phase and increase their quality. Lin Yuan slapped his thigh with delight. No matter what, I am a transmigrator who has reincarnated, but I have never found my cheat. Now that I have coincidentally found it, I am going to rise up. At that moment, Lin Yuan heard a knocking sound coming from the store's door. He was preparing to open the door to see who was looking for him. After taking 2 steps forward, Lin Yuan felt as though there was a trace of spirit qi remaining in his body. In the past, no matter how much spirit qi he absorbed, it would rapidly dissipate. Could it be that evolving phase and inducing them to evolve would also increase his spiritual power? If that was the case, then he would also be able to cultivate and become a spirit qi professional. When Lin Yuan opened the door, he saw Auntie Zhang pushing a wheelchair at the entrance. On the wheelchair was a middle-aged man with mixed black and white hair. When Lin Yuan opened the door, the middle-aged man spoke with a hoarse voice. "Little Yuan, your Auntie Zhang wants to bring me to see a doctor. As usual, we will be gone for over 3 months. If you have any problems that you can't resolve, give your Auntie Zhang a call." Lin Yuan looked at Uncle Li, who was seated in the wheelchair and had a leisurely expression. However, the gauze wrapped around his calf was oozing with blackish purple blood. It was as though the injury wasn't on his body. A few years ago, Lin Yuan had seen Auntie Zhang changing Uncle Li's dressing. Uncle Li's calf seemed to have something hidden in his flesh, and it looked extremely sinister and terrifying. Auntie Zhang used her hand to knock on Uncle Li's head and said, "Little Yuan is more sensible than you. Kid Yuan is more sensible than you. Do I still need you to instruct me?" Uncle Li didn't seem to feel the rotten blood flowing out of his wounds. However, when Auntie Zhang knocked on his head, Uncle Li couldn't help but rub his head. He looked like an obedient punching bag. After knocking on Uncle Li's head, Auntie Zhang said to Lin Yuan, "Little Yuan, my cell phone is always on. Little Yuan, my phone is always on. If you encounter anything, you must call me directly no matter what time it is." Lin Yuan looked at Auntie Zhang and Uncle Li and nodded heavily. "Uncle Auntie, don't worry." After Auntie Zhang instructed Lin Yuan for a long time, she was still a little worried. as she slowly pushed the wheelchair towards an intersection in the distance. The terror rabbit, which was acting as a cushion for Uncle Lee, twitched its ears at Lin Yuan, as though it was bidding farewell. This time, Uncle Lee's treatment seems to have been brought forward by more than a month. It seems like Uncle Lee's leg injury is getting worse. Lin Yuan had just used the true eye to check on Uncle Lee's leg injury. Uncle Lee's leg was inflicted with a poison called tarsal gangrene, and it wasn't an external injury. This poison was mainly a biological poison, and also had a spiritual curse effect. According to true data, this poison came from a venomous insect called the bone-rotting filarial worm. The bone-rotting filarial worm was a very evil fae. The lowest grade bone-rotting filarial worm was a platinum fae, and it was very precious and rare. The bone-rotting filarial worm's normal attacks would contain a poison called the bone-rotting poison. This poison wasn't tarsal gangrene. In order to form tarsal gangrene, the bone-rotting filarial worm had to burrow into the flesh and sacrifice itself, transforming its vitality into a poison. Such a poison was tarsal gangrene. It showed how terrifying the tarsal gangrene poison was. Chapter 9. The world was huge, and it had been 100 years since the Spirit Chi awakening. According to scholars' speculations, the planet had expanded by at least 100 times or more. No one didn't wish to understand more about this world in their lifetime. It was the same for Lin Yuan. Therefore, every step he took now had to be firm and steady. After Auntie Zhang and Uncle Li walked far away, Lin Yuan returned to the store and closed the door. Lin Yuan planned to close the store today. Previously, he had been like a sickly invalid, and his spiritual energy and stamina weren't enough to expand the store's business. However, it was different now. In the afternoon, Lin Yuan planned to clean up the courtyard at the back. He would then clean up the stacked tables in the courtyard and set them up as a warehouse to store phase. He then placed the shelves that he hadn't used in the past in the store and used them to display more phase. Lin Yuan now had the energy to tend to more phase. Tending to phase to evolve was also the only way for Lin Yuan to increase his spiritual energy. After cleaning up the courtyard in the afternoon, Lin Yuan was so tired that he couldn't even speak. He sat on the stool for a long time before he felt alive again. At that moment, the door on the second floor, which Lin Yuan had shut tightly in the morning, was gently pushed open from the inside. After a meow, there was a chirping sound that was even more pleasing to the ear than before. Genius had obviously noticed its transformation, so it immediately ran down from the second floor and jumped onto Lin Yuan's lap before saying to him, "Master, I'll be fine." It then said to Lin Yuan, "Chimey and I seem to have evolved." Genius was a smart cat fae, and the main reason why it was called a housekeeping beast was because the 100 questions beast could communicate well with humans and was like a small encyclopedia that could remember a lot of information. Lin Yuan reached out his hand and rubbed Genius' head. He noticed that Genius' newly grown silver-gray braided fur was much thicker than before, and there was a toughness in its fur. It wasn't as loose as before. This meant that the 100 questions beast had evolved to normal grade, and its fur's defense had improved. Chimey's spirituality wasn't as high as Genius, and it still wasn't sure of the situation. It felt that it had slept for too long, and was a little embarrassed. It stood on Lin Yuan's ear, and gently caressed the hair above his ear. When Chimey saw Lin Yuan touching Genius, it immediately hopped onto Genius' head. It imitated Lin Yuan's actions, and used its small claws to help Genius comb its fur. In the past, Chimey would not have been like this. Lin Yuan clearly felt that after Chimey had evolved, its intelligence had improved. "Songming, do you feel any difference from before after your transformation?" As Lin Yuan spoke, he had already checked Genius' true data. Fey name: 100 questions beast spirit species, feline/intelligent cat, Fey grade. Normal 2/10 Fey type, spiritual quality of comprehension. Normal skills frowny face precise memory. When memorizing something, it can accurately remember every detail in detail. Precise memory was a very profound skill. If Genius was still the same as before, it would not be able to remember so many things. This skill was better than nothing. However, if Genius could remember more things than before, Then Lin Yuan simply didn't dare to imagine this ability. Genius let out a meow and said, "Lin Yuan, I feel that I can remember more things than before. If I can remember one piece of red braised meat in the past, then I can remember 30 pieces of red braised meat now." Lin Yuan hadn't eaten for the entire day, and after hearing Genius' analogy, he couldn't help but feel extremely hungry. However, the hunger didn't distract Lin Yuan at all. In the past, Genius' memory could only remember the contents of 3 to 5 books. If it was really 30 times as Genius said, then it would be able to memorize the contents of around 100 books. That was a conservative estimate of being able to memorize the contents of about 100 books. Moreover, it was accurate memory, being able to remember the details of the contents of the books. Lin Yuan had been worrying about how to pass the Creation Master exam. The content of the Creation Master exam was to evolve a Fae that had reached a bottleneck within a specified period of time. It might sound simple, but there were prerequisites in order to qualify for the Creation Master exam. The prerequisites for the Creation Master exam were to pass at least 3 Lifestyles primary exams. Only after obtaining 3 Lifestyles primary certificates would one be qualified to apply for the Creation Master exam. There were plenty of Lifestyles, but it wasn't easy to complete the Lifestyles primary exams. 4 lifestyle class occupations like craftsmen that forged energy ores or weavers that weaved silk, cotton, and linen, they all required true abilities that were built up from a young age. The forging and weaving of Faes wasn't like the blacksmiths and tailors before the Spirit Chi awakening, where one only needed strength and dexterity. Lifestyles like craftsmen and weavers required an understanding of Faes before they could forge and weave to fuse the spiritual materials. If Lin Yuan wanted to obtain the qualifications to take the Creation Master exam, such lifestyles obviously weren't within his capabilities. Now that Genius had evolved and possessed abilities, Lin Yuan had a choice. There were 3 lifestyle class Spirit Chi occupations that tested one's knowledge reserve: Scholar, Fae Researcher, and Spiritual Ingredient Analyst. These 3 lifestyles tested one's knowledge reserve. However, it was precisely because it tested one's knowledge reserve, and doing research was a very rigorous matter, so the standards of the exam were very strict. Each exam would require 500 questions, and it would use a 1,000 points system. If one answered a question correctly, 2 points would be awarded, and no points would be awarded. If one answered a question incorrectly, 4 points would be deducted. Such an exam method was said to warn those who did research and learning to be rigorous. If one didn't understand or wasn't clear, one could leave a question blank and not use ambiguous answers to deal with it. If one scored above 900 points for these 3 lifestyle class Spirit Chi occupations, one would be allowed to pass the exam. One shouldn't think that this exam didn't seem difficult. Putting aside the fact that there were always some tricky questions, if one answered a question incorrectly, it would be the same as answering 2 questions incorrectly. Furthermore, if one failed the exam, one could only apply for another exam 1 year later. Due to various reasons, these 3 lifestyle class primary exams were the primary exams that people chose the least. However, these 3 exams that others found difficult were suitable for Lin Yuan. I just need to ask Genius to memorize the low-grade books for the Scholar, Fae Researcher, and Spiritual Ingredient Analyst that are involved in the exam. Housekeeping beasts had been popular for close to 100 years, and they were just like a life assistant. During the lifestyle class exam, one was allowed to bring along housekeeping beasts like the 100 Questions beast as an assistant. However, there were exceptions. During the Creation Master exam, apart from the examinees, no one was allowed to enter. It was also prohibited to bring spiritual ingredients. The spiritual ingredients that could be used could only be provided at the exam venue. However, all of this was just a small matter for Lin Yuan. During the exam, he just had to pour Spirit Chi into the Fae, and he would be able to pass the exam. Chapter 10. Lin Yuan knew that if he didn't hide his ability to evolve Faes and find a reasonable explanation, it would surely invite a calamity. It was said that the tallest tree in the forest would be destroyed by the wind. The taller the tree, the stronger the mountain wind would be. It was just like how a genius would have a halo, that would often be accompanied by jealousy. Lin Yuan's ability wasn't something that could be described as a genius. His strength was just like a sapling that had just drilled out of the soil. If he was careless and placed himself in the eye of the storm, he would instantly wither. Creation Master was the only path that he had to take. Therefore, Lin Yuan planned to purchase some books on the star web for genius, such as Scholar, Fey Researcher, and Spiritual Ingredient Analyst. These were the books that were required for the basic lifestyle occupation exam. With genius knowledge reserves of at least 100 books, it would be sufficient. However, Lin Yuan was also a little worried as the price of these books wasn't cheap. After the Spirit Chi awakening, the network had been paralyzed for over a decade before recovering. At the same time, the network had been renovated, and the network model was more like a large-scale virtual world. It was known as the Federation Star Web. When entering the Federation Star Web, everyone would need to bind their own Federation citizen information, be it entertainment live broadcasts, virtual transactions, social interactions, or ranking fights. They could all be done. After dozens of years of development, the Federation's Star Web was practically a second world for the Radiance Federation citizens. The books that Lin Yuan required were sold in the Federation's Star Web's bookstore. These books were compiled by high-ranked scholars, Fey observers, and spiritual ingredient analysts. The average price of such books was close to 100 Federation dollars. For every book sold in the bookstore, the editor would obtain around 15% of the profits. Therefore, the income of a lifestyle occupation was rather considerable. A total of 100 books would require around 10,000 Federation dollars. This 10,000 Federation dollars was almost all of Lin Yuan's wealth, and a large portion of his wealth was to be set aside for his younger sister's tuition fee next year. Lin Yuan remembered that his younger sister's school's curriculum was about to start with the Fey contract class. After the Fey contract class, the curriculum would be more focused on actual combat. Therefore, before that, he still had to find a suitable high-grade Fey for his younger sister. I am still poor. Lin Yuan couldn't help but sigh. What he needed to do now was to quickly earn money. He already had a clear direction, but he needed Federation dollars to clear the obstacles. When Genius saw that Lin Yuan was thinking about something, it frowned and brought Chimey, which was on its head, into Lin Yuan's arms. Although the 100 Questions Beast's intelligence had evolved, Lin Yuan was still the most important person to it. Genius would be able to feel warmth and a sense of security from Lin Yuan. Chimey was still standing on Genius' head. Perhaps it had sensed the changes in its body, but it happily chirped and sang. Chimey was a songstress bird that had failed to evolve. At first, it didn't know how to sing. Under Lin Yuan's guidance, it had learned a song with great difficulty. Lin Yuan had only heard a few songs in this world, so he naturally didn't know how to sing them. Therefore, the songs that Lin Yuan taught Chimey were lyrics that he made up based on the poems from before he transmigrated. In the past, although Lin Yuan would always praise Chimey when it sang, it was more like it was singing a sloppy song and could not sing the taste of poetry. Now that Chimey was singing this song again, Lin Yuan felt that it was like the Kunshan jade shatters and the phoenix cries, the hibiscus weeps and the fragrant orchid smiles. Lin Yuan felt as though he had suddenly stepped into a wilderness where the grass was long and the nightingales were flying. The tinkling spring water was the zither, the wind-blown willow trees were the melody, and the dewy dust was the curtain. In the distance, there seemed to be a swan that was treading on the snow. When Lin Yuan went to look for the swan, it had vanished into thin air. Only the swan's claws on the snow proved that the swan had been here. Layers of wintersweet suddenly bloomed on the swan's claws. Among the wintersweet, there was an antique and beautiful figure that was holding a book and reciting with a frown. Myriad trees are about to break. Lonely roots return alone. In the deep snow in front, a branch bloomed last night. The wind carries the delicate fragrance away, and the birds take a peek at the plain beauty. Winter and summer blended into one scene, and the beautiful scenery had a hint of antiquity. All of this came from Chimey's singing. If Chimey's singing in the past was just a child's play, then Chimey's singing now was truly at the peak of perfection. As Chimey was the first and only normal grade sound bird, It seemed like its mastery of music wasn't just for show. As Chimey sang, it also realized that its singing voice seemed to have become better. It flapped its wings and happily flew around the house. Lin Yuan observed Chimey's true data. Fey name: sound bird Fey species, bluefinch species/kingfisher species Fey grade, normal 3/10, Fey type, sound Fey quality, normal abilities frowny face sound thrust, fire a sharp thorn that is formed by sound at a designated target. Lin Yuan didn't expect Chimey to be a combat class combat pet. Lin Yuan stopped Chimey and said, "Chimey, release sound thrust at the wooden board at the door." When Chimey heard Lin Yuan's command, it instinctively let out a clear cry. When Chimey heard Lin Yuan's command, it instinctively let out a clear cry. At the same time, Lin Yuan saw the wooden board at the door tremble. Lin Yuan walked over to take a look, and saw that the 1 centimeter thick wooden board wasn't penetrated. However, there was a rather deep white mark on the wooden board. Lin Yuan caressed the white mark and calculated Chimey's attack power in his heart. It was roughly 3 kilograms of propulsion force. Such an attack power wasn't outstanding among normal Feys, but it was superior in that its attack method was formless and immaterial. The attack speed was very fast and hard to dodge. Lin Yuan couldn't help but have a thought. If I continue to nurture Genius and Chimey, what will they become? Now that I have the ability, will I be able to evolve Genius and Chimey from normal to elite? From elite rank to bronze rank, silver rank, gold rank, platinum rank, and even to the lord rank with a domain? Or was it possible for Genius and Chimey to reach the legendary grade during the evolution process and undergo a qualitative change, transforming them into fantasy breeds? Fantasy breeds had always been the most sacred term in the Fey world. Fantasy breeds referred to Feys that should only exist in fantasy and shouldn't exist in reality. When a Fey's quality reached legend after bronze, it would be able to fuse the willpower of a certain mountain, river, ocean, or even the sky into the Fey's body, allowing the Fey to undergo a qualitative change. Such means could only be grasped by high-grade creation masters. Lin Yuan felt that if his ability was as good as it was now, he might be able to do it in the future. However, what Lin Yuan needed to do now was to make a trip to the Fey wholesale market and choose which Fey he wanted to use Morbius Spirit Lock to form a contract with. At the same time, he had to strive for Chimey and Genius quality to reach Epic before Elite reached Bronze. Above Elite was Flawless, and above Flawless was Epic. When the Fey reached Epic, when Elite reached Bronze, it would undergo a gene optimization during the evolution. This gene optimization was to awaken the characteristics. There were all sorts of Fey characteristics, and the Fey's awakened characteristics were random. Therefore, many Feys would awaken weak characteristics when evolving from Elite to Bronze, or they wouldn't be compatible with the contractor's class. When the gene optimization reached Bronze, the Fey's quality would drop back to normal before evolving again. However, if the Elite Fey reached Epic before evolving, it would obtain 3 characteristics at the same time. The contractor could choose one of the characteristics, and since the Fey couldn't be changed after forming a contract, it was the same as giving the contractor 2 more chances. Chapter 11. The sky was already dark, and without turning on the lights, the house looked rather pitch black. After Lin Yuan turned on the lights, he went to the kitchen and cooked a pot of vegetable porridge. The white rice grains were dotted with moderate-sized vegetables. He might only have added a little salt, but the taste of the rice grains and vegetables caused Lin Yuan's stomach to grumble after starving for an entire day. Chimey was eating usnias as usual, but the usnias had already evolved to normal. Chimey had never eaten such good food before, and it might have eaten too much. When Chimey was eating, it would use its wings to rub its round belly. Lin Yuan had a big bowl of vegetable porridge, while Genius had a small bowl. The two of them were enjoying their food. After Auntie Zhang left, Chimey didn't feel restrained anymore, and had been singing for the entire night. It might only know one song, but when Chimey sang, it was enjoyable. Genius was still squatting on Lin Yuan's body as usual, while Lin Yuan was working hard to induce the remaining 3 pots of jasmine lilies to evolve. 3 hours after dinner, the 3 pots of jasmine lilies had successfully evolved from the normal rank to the elite rank. Lin Yuan realized that after the phase evolved to elite, it was much slower to evolve them. After spending 2 hours, the jasmine lilies had only evolved from Elite I to Elite II, but the quality didn't change. It seemed like with Lin Yuan's current strength, it would take a long time for the phase to evolve from Elite to Bronze. His evolution speed was dependent on his spirit qi absorption speed. If he wanted to increase his spirit qi absorption speed, he had to become a spirit qi professional. Now that he had evolved 3 normal phase to Elite, Lin Yuan felt that his spiritual power had grown significantly. Based on the current speed, if he were to evolve another 200 pots of normal phase into Elite phase, he might be able to become the lowest D-rank spirit qi professional. By then, his spirit qi absorption speed would increase, and it would be easier for him to evolve the phase. Just as Lin Yuan was evolving the normal Usnias, and was preparing to evolve the first pot of normal Usnias to Elite, Lin Yuan's old-fashioned phone rang. When Lin Yuan looked at the phone, his face revealed a warm smile. The moment he picked up the phone, a clear voice came from the other end. "Brother, I haven't called you for 2 days. How's your health?" It was a familiar opening line. Every time he picked up the phone, his sister would always ask this line. It was like a habit. "My body is much better than before, don't worry. I've even cleaned up the backyard." "Lin Yuan, why are you cleaning up the backyard?" "Your body." Chu Ci, who was on the other end of the line, was a little anxious. When she was 8 years old, she and Lin Yuan were left to depend on each other. Lin Yuan had been helping her survive since she was 8 years old. Ever since she had been tested as an outstanding spirit qi professional, Lin Yuan had resolutely provided for her to go to school when she was only 6 years old. This had been going on for 9 years. One could imagine how much effort an 8-year-old frail child, who needed someone to take care of him, had to work hard to survive. Now that she heard that Lin Yuan had cleaned up the backyard, it was obvious that he was planning to expand the scale of the store and earn more money. But how could her body endure it? It was not that Chu Ci did not want to go to school and help Lin Yuan at home. She had even protested by not doing her homework properly and getting low marks on the exams. However, because of what Lin Yuan had said to her on that rainy night with reddened eyes, "Chu Ci, you're my only family. Don't let me down." Chu Ci still remembered that Lin Yuan had roared when he had said this, and this roar had awakened her. She had abandoned all her rebelliousness and become an excellent student who had always been the first in her exams, because she did not want to let Lin Yuan down. However, upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, Chu Ci became anxious. Lin Yuan could also hear his sister's emotions, so he said, "I've just cleaned up a little. I just cleaned it up a little. The shop is still the same." It was not that Lin Yuan had not thought of telling Chu Ci that he could sense spirit qi, but he was afraid that his sister would not only not believe him, but she would also not be at ease. It was better to wait until the holidays to tell Chu Ci. However, Lin Yuan would not tell Chu Ci that he could evolve phase. It was not that he did not trust her, but he did not want to bring danger to Chu Ci when the secret was exposed one day. Upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, Chu Ci was relieved. The siblings were not people who were good at expressing the passionate feelings hidden in the depths of their hearts. Thus, after telling each other that they were safe, they quickly hung up the phone. After Chu Ci hung up the phone, she heard her roommate's envious voice. "You and your brother have such a good relationship. Unlike me, when I return home and see my younger brother, I get a headache. But your surname is Chu, and your brother's surname is Lin. It's really strange." The corners of Chu Ci's mouth curled up, reflecting the warmth in the dormitory. Lin Yuan had followed his father's surname, Lin, and she had followed her mother's surname. This was her father's love for her mother, and it was also the very vague parental love left in Chu Ci's memory. "Chu Ci, we're going to contract phase tomorrow. Why don't you go out with me to relax?" Chu Ci shook her head, pointed to the exercise book on her desk, and spread her hands. Her roommate also spoke in a tone as if she was used to it. You only know how to do exercises in the dormitory. If I looked like you, I would go out all day. You don't know how many people in the school like you." When her roommate saw that Chu Si was not interested in going out, she went out on her own. Perhaps she could meet some companions along the way. Chu Si picked up her pen and wrote neatly on the exercise book. There was almost no pause, and it was obvious that she was already familiar with these exercises. Chu Si picked up her pen and wrote neatly on the exercise book. There was almost no pause, and it was obvious that she had memorized these exercises. Chu Si could earn 20 Federation dollars for each exercise book, and it was not a problem for her to do 2 or 3 exercises in her spare time. In fact, this was also Chu Si's way of learning. An exercise book cost 40 Federation dollars, which was too expensive, and Chu Si could not afford it. Now that she was doing exercises as a part-time job, she could also earn money. It was killing 2 birds with 1 stone. This was also Chu Si's first year doing a part-time job, and she did not dare to let Lin Yuan know that she was doing a part-time job. If he knew, he would probably be angry. Thus, Chu Si was not using this money to pay for school fees. Instead, she was planning to buy some body-strengthening herbs for Lin Yuan when she returned home during the holidays. Even though her hands were already sore, Chu Si did not feel tired at all while she was doing the exercise book. At that moment, banging sounds suddenly came from Chu Si's drawer. Chu Si opened the drawer and saw a box containing an ugly gray beetle that was half the size of a palm and had a thick carapace. Tomorrow was the Fey contract class, and she needed to contract her first Fey. Chu Si did not tell Lin Yuan and used the money she earned to prepare the gray beetle, which almost no one in the Federation was willing to contract. Chapter 12. Lin Yuan had a good night's sleep. Genius and Chimey were leaning on Lin Yuan, and even in their dreams, they were slowly absorbing the spirit qi from Lin Yuan's body. Lin Yuan woke up as usual and went to train for an hour before opening the store at 7 a.m. Soon enough, the elite usnea vines were sold out. Plants like the usnea vines, which were used as nutritious food for herbivorous Fays, had always been in short supply. Furthermore, Lin Yuan's usnea vines were growing well and selling at a good price. When he was selling the usnea vines, he had also successfully sold a pot of elite jasmine lily for 5,500 Federation dollars. In just one morning, Lin Yuan had earned a sum that he could not even earn in a month. Excluding the usnea vine, just the elite jasmine lily alone was equivalent to Lin Yuan's previous monthly income. This made Lin Yuan very happy. He was preparing to head to the Fey wholesale market to stock up. At that moment his phone rang again. Lin Yuan realized that it was an unfamiliar number. When he picked it up, he heard an anxious and angry voice. "Are you Chu Si's guardian?" Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan hurriedly replied, "I am Chu Si. Did something happen at school? You are?" The voice on the other end of the phone was very impolite, and it came right to his face. "Who am I? I am Chu Si's homeroom teacher, Teacher Bao. What kind of parent are you?" During the Fey contract class, Chu Si actually contracted a gray beetle and suffered a backlash. As parents, don't you know how to prepare a better Fey for your child? What was a gray beetle? Don't you know that this is a waste of Chu Si's exceptional talent? Generally speaking, teachers and parents were very polite when communicating. But Teacher Bao on the other end of the phone was really angry. When Lin Yuan heard Teacher Bao's words, cold sweat instantly drenched his back. How could Lin Yuan not know about the gray beetle? It was a normal Fey that could be purchased with 200 Federation dollars. Due to the gray beetle's extremely aggressive nature during the contract, it might turn into an attacking state and devour the contractor. At the same time, the gray beetle's skill was quite useless. It only had the ability to dig, which was of little help to combat classes. The gray beetles preferred dark and humid environments and fed on rotten meat. Such a habit caused the gray beetle to be the number 1 Fey that no one was willing to form a contract with. Currently, the gray beetles were mostly used as food for high-grade insect-type Feys. Lin Yuan's voice was a little unstable as he asked Teacher Bao. The veins on his hand that was holding the phone were bulging. "Teacher Bao, is Chu Si all right now?" An extremely dissatisfied voice came from the other end of the phone. Fortunately, she didn't form a contract with the gray beetle. Chu Xi's talent is the best among all the students that I have taught. Her affinity with phase is all defense-type phase. There aren't many people with such talent in the entire Redbud City. If nurtured properly, she might even be able to fight for the Federation's 100 sequence. I hope that your parents will value such talent. On the other end of the line, Teacher Bao might be angry, but he didn't forget his job and started to educate Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan heaved a sigh of relief and asked hurriedly, "What's wrong with you?" "Teacher Bao, is Chu Xi still unconscious? I'm coming over right now." Teacher Bao on the other end of the phone immediately reminded, "When your parents come, you better bring an outstanding elite Fei for Chu Xi. Otherwise, it will be a waste of Chu Xi's talent." A Spirit Chi professional's talent referred to the compatibility between the Spirit Chi professional and the Fei, or rather, the compatibility range. Some professionals had an affinity with support-type phase, but at the same time, they only had an affinity with snake-type phase. Therefore, they could only form a contract with snake-type phase. Such a range was extremely narrow. A Spirit Chi professional could form a contract with 3 to 5 phase in their lifetime, and it would be difficult to find 3 phase for some unorthodox types of affinity. This was just an ordinary innate talent. Those with inferior innate talents might only have an affinity with support-type snake phase, but they would only have an affinity with venomous snakes. This would undoubtedly narrow down the range by a huge margin. It was already very difficult to find a suitable Fei, let alone forming a contract with multiple Feis to form one's combat system. To combat class Spirit Chi professionals, the combination of Feis was very important. A Spirit Chi professional's combat was based on the coordination and combination of various Feis to play a complementary role. Therefore, the wider the range of the Fei, the better the combination. Some people would only nurture one Fei, and the other Feis would be used to enhance this main Fei. This was a kind of contract strategy that could effectively save resources in the current Federation. It could be seen that Chu Xi's talent was extremely strong. Lin Yuan replied, "Teacher, don't worry. I'll make a trip to the school tomorrow and bring Chu Xi's Fei over." Lin Yuan somewhat blamed her in his heart, but he could also understand her thoughts. Then the blame turned into heartache. It was also good that he was going this time. He would let the little lass see that he could absorb spiritual power, and that his physique was no longer the same as before. This way, the little lass would be at ease. When Teacher Bao saw that Lin Yuan's attitude was very good, his anger was mostly gone. However, he couldn't help but remind him again, "It's best if it's an elite Fei." Then he hung up the phone. After hanging up the phone, Teacher Bao let out a long sigh in the office. Although he had only taught Chu Xi for 2 weeks, he was already touched by her serious learning. Teachers always liked diligent students, and Chu Xi's talent made Teacher Bao very fond of her. As a teacher, he had a little understanding of his classmates' families. Teacher Bao had heard that Chu Xi's family conditions weren't very good, so he didn't expect Lin Yuan to bring an elite Fei. Teacher Bao touched the salary card in his pocket and gritted his teeth. If Chu Xi's parents brought a normal Fei, then he would fork out his own money to buy an elite Fei for Chu Xi. He couldn't let Chu Xi's talent go to waste. Lin Yuan hung up the phone and was silent for a long time. He only returned to his senses when Genius called him. After looking at the remaining 3 pots of elite jasmine lilies, 1 pot of elite usneas, and over 20 pots of normal usneas, Lin Yuan immediately dispelled the idea of going to the Fei wholesale market. He immediately closed the store's doors. Lin Yuan was prepared to stay up all night and nurture all these normal usneas into elite. Then, he would sell them at the Fei market tomorrow and exchange them for a good top-notch elite defense-type Fei for his younger sister. Over 20 pots of normal usneas had finally evolved into elite Feis after Lin Yuan worked hard to circulate the spirit qi throughout the night. Even if he was abnormally exhausted, he didn't stop. Once again, Lin Yuan felt the accumulated spiritual power in his body getting stronger. Chapter 13. Lin Yuan, who hadn't slept for a night, felt as though he had returned to the weak state where he couldn't sense the spirit qi, and his spiritual energy didn't grow. Lin Yuan shook his head and felt that the feeling of weakness was rather familiar. However, Lin Yuan didn't have the time to rest now. Lin Yuan ran upstairs and opened up an old wooden chest that contained plenty of youth's clothes. The youngster's clothes were very simple. The top piece of denim was washed to the point that the blue fabric had turned a little white. Lin Yuan took out all the clothes, and there was a card at the bottom of the chest. This card was the Star Web card. Every citizen of the Radiance Federation only had one Star Web card, and it was just like a real one card. The Star Web card also had the functions of a bank card. This small card contained all of Lin Yuan's belongings, and together with yesterday's sales, it was close to 20,000 Federation dollars. Genius obediently squatted at the head of the bed and meowed at Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan, it should be raining later. I will accompany you. Lin Yuan rubbed Genius' head and pointed at Chimey, which was sleeping soundly on the bed. Genius, you and Chimey accompanied me for the entire night. You should sleep for a while too. A genius that sleeps obediently is a genius. Genius immediately meowed and lay beside Chimey before looking at Lin Yuan and saying, Genius is a genius. Genius is a genius. Lin Yuan took the umbrella and closed the store's door before walking towards the Fei wholesale market. The hot and stuffy weather was drizzling, making it abnormally humid. As a resident of Redbud City, Lin Yuan was already familiar with such weather. The Fei wholesale market wasn't close to Lin Yuan's home, and it was around 7 kilometers away. Normally, Lin Yuan would walk to purchase the goods. With Lin Yuan's previous physique, a 7-kilometer journey would take over 2 hours, and Lin Yuan obviously didn't have that much time now. Today, he had told his teacher that he was going to the school to deliver a Fei to Chu Ci for the contract. Moreover, Lin Yuan was truly worried about Chu Ci's safety. If he didn't have to prepare the Fei, Lin Yuan would have already gone to look for Chu Ci yesterday. He walked to a nearby transportation station and used his star card to register. Soon enough, a thick-hoofed donkey was arranged for him. The thick-hoofed donkey was a normal Fei. Due to its fast walking speed, it was the lowest grade public vehicle, and was widely used in every corner of the Radiance Federation. After the Spirit Qi awakening 100 years ago, all sorts of Feis had evolved and mutated to replace most of the steel machinery. However, this did not mean that the Radiance Federation's technology had regressed. On the contrary, 100 years after the Spirit Qi awakening, human technology had greatly improved. The Star Web was the best proof. As he sat on the thick-hoofed donkey carriage, the cool breeze brought by the thick-hoofed donkey's galloping made Lin Yuan feel much more spirited and comfortable. When Lin Yuan got in the car, the driver kept sizing him up. When he saw that Lin Yuan had also noticed him, he greeted him warmly. Young brother, are you going to the Fei market to buy a Fei? I have made a few trips to the Fei market today. When Lin Yuan saw that his master was chatting with him, he chuckled. That's right, master. Let's go to the Fei market to take a look. Why are you making so many trips to the Fei market today? Lin Yuan had only asked casually, and followed the driver's words. In the end, it seemed as though the driver was waiting for Lin Yuan to say this. So he started to talk incessantly. Let me tell you, this isn't a coincidence. It is because there is an additional batch of goods in the Fei market today. When Lin Yuan saw the mysterious look on the driver's face, he became interested. A driver who was always out and about would be pulling a lot of customers. Therefore, he was always well informed. The driver was also a straightforward person and didn't keep Lin Yuan in suspense. He immediately spoke. Young brother, have you seen the news for the past 2 days? Do you know that a dimensional rift has opened up 15 miles away from the Xia region's suburbs? Lin Yuan didn't expect that the Fei market would be related to this dimensional rift outside the city. Whenever a dimensional rift opened up, it was a major event for the Radiance Federation. This was because the other side of the dimensional rift was usually connected to an alternate plane. Just like the dimensional rift outside the Xia region, it was connected to an alternate plane with alien insects. Redbud City immediately dispatched the Redbud Guards to the Xia region. The Redbud Guards used 2 days and 2 nights to kill all the alien insects that rushed out from the dimensional rift and control the situation of the dimensional rift. The news had been reporting about this matter, and it was said that there were still 3 teams of Redbud Guards guarding the vicinity of the dimensional rift. Seeing Lin Yuan's expression, the driver knew that Lin Yuan knew about this matter, and it instantly triggered the driver's desire to continue speaking. This dimensional rift opened up without any warning, and it just so happened that it opened up in the vicinity of a small Fey breeding base. When the alien insects invaded, the breeding base suffered a calamity. I heard that only a few employees managed to escape, and when the rescue team arrived, the entire breeding base didn't have any complete Feys left. However, there were some Feys that were severely injured and didn't die. As a result, the few employees that escaped set up a stall in the Fey market and wished to sell those severely injured and disabled Feys. Lin Yuan's eyes lit up when he heard the news. Severely injured and disabled Feys wouldn't be too expensive, and it meant that there were still some leftovers. Driver, then can you bring me to the nearest intersection to that stall? I will alight there and go take a look. The driver chuckled and said, All right, young brother. However, I heard that those Feys' injuries are extremely severe, and they have injured their foundations. It isn't something that a healer can heal. In order to heal those severely injured Feys, I'm afraid we can only look for a creation master. After speaking, he couldn't help but sigh. If I were to look for a creation master, the price of this treatment would probably be enough to buy a new one. Lin Yuan's body had already recovered, and his mood was much better. It was rare for him to be mischievous. Once the beast dies and the pot is covered, the entire village will be waiting for the dishes to be served. If they really can't be healed, it isn't a bad idea to use them as ingredients. Lin Yuan was just being mischievous, but he didn't expect the driver to actually agree. Once the dishes are served and the firecrackers are fired, the entire village will start to snatch them. Yesterday, I picked up an elite blunt armor pig from that stall. My wife even hung it up as cured meat. When looking at the driver's proud expression, Lin Yuan couldn't help but give a thumbs up and reveal his white teeth. Sir, you are still the best. After alighting from the car and arriving at the Fey market, Lin Yuan could clearly feel that there were more people than before. All of the Fey stalls were filled with different types of Feys. However, it was obvious that a stall wouldn't sell more than 5 types of Feys, and it was completely different from the neighboring stalls. It was obvious that the stalls had discussed with each other to prevent malicious competition. The prices of Feys would fluctuate, but the fluctuations wouldn't be huge. For example, the normal jasmine lily's price was already 450 Federation dollars, and it was 50 Federation dollars, more than the previous time Lin Yuan had purchased it. Chapter 14. Spirit plants like usneas that were used for production were rarely seen in the market. Normal ranked usneas could still occasionally be seen being traded in the market. However, almost no one would trade elite ranked usneas in the market. A pot of elite usneas was equivalent to a foundation, and the daily production of usnea vines could barely support the daily expenses of a small store. High-grade usneas were expensive because they could produce over a dozen usnea vines every day, unlike jasmine lilies that didn't produce anything. As long as some inferior energy stones were buried in the pot, the usneas could produce usnea vines for a week. It was like a hen that could lay eggs, and it would naturally have a higher price. Even if they were all elite Feys, the price difference between them was like heaven and earth. Lin Yuan looked around the Fey market and saw that the highest normal usneas were priced at 1,600 Federation dollars. Those with thick vines that were growing well were priced at 3,000 Federation dollars. They were nearly twice as expensive. At that moment, Lin Yuan suddenly realized how much wealth he had created in a single night. He didn't just have normal usneas, but over 20 pots of elite usneas that were growing well. This wealth shocked Lin Yuan, but he quickly regained his composure. He had the ability to evolve Feys, and he would only earn more money in the future. This was just the beginning. Along the way, Lin Yuan looked at the various Feys at the stalls and tried to circulate his spiritual power. He could clearly feel his instincts getting close to and rejecting these Feys. Lin Yuan felt that he was more compatible with healing type and support type Feys. Apart from that, Lin Yuan also felt an instinctive closeness to plant type Feys. Previously, Lin Yuan couldn't sense the spirit qi, so he naturally didn't know his affinity with those fays. Now that Lin Yuan was circulating his spiritual power, he knew the direction of his affinity in this fey market. Lin Yuan couldn't help but recall what Teacher Bao had said previously. Chu Xi had an affinity with defense-type fays, and Teacher Bao had said that she was a genius that was qualified to fight for the 100 sequence. Since my affinity range is so wide, what kind of talent can I reach? Immediately after, Lin Yuan recalled his pitifully low spiritual power. With his tiny amount of spiritual energy, it didn't matter how talented he was. If he couldn't form a contract with a fey, it was useless. The fey attributes that Lin Yuan was compatible with meant that he would be able to use Morbius' exclusive skill to Spirit Lock. Morbius' Spirit Lock characteristic could only allow him to use the fey's initial abilities. Thus, Lin Yuan had to choose carefully. Healers and support types were much rarer than assault-type classes. Among the healing type and support type, healing type fays were the rarest. Therefore, Lin Yuan planned for his first fey to Spirit Lock to be a healing type fey with a powerful basic healing ability. However, the most important thing now was not how to choose a fey for Spirit Lock, but to choose an excellent elite defense type fey for Chu Xi. As of now, Lin Yuan had only discovered 2 or 3 types of elite defense type fays. Among them, only the hard-skinned rabbit was considered good. The elite level had the skill Tough Skin, which could produce a kind of Qilin skin shield on the surface of the contestant's skin to help block damage. However, this hard-skinned rabbit clearly didn't meet Lin Yuan's standards. It would be great if there was more time. Lin Yuan could nurture a top-notch elite fey for Chu Xi, but he only had 1 day. The Radiance Federation's school management was very strict. If a student didn't form a contract with a fey before the start of the combat class, they would fail the combat class, and it would affect their admission to top universities in the future. This would undoubtedly delay Chu Xi's entire life. At that moment, Lin Yuan saw an iron cage at the feet of a vendor at the front of a stall. The cage contained 3 small goats with curved horns. Although these lambs still looked like lambs, their horns were extremely large, completely disproportionate to their bodies. Lin Yuan's eyes lit up as they were coiled horn goats. Fey name: Coiled horn goat fey species. Goat subfamily / horn goat fey grade. Elite 7 out of 10. Fey type: Rock fey quality. Flawless abilities: Frowny face parry. Use the large horns on the head to resist and defend. Horn attack: use the large horns on the head to attack the target. Coiled horn goats were considered one of the more outstanding elite fays, especially the 3 coiled horn goats in the iron cage. They were still young and had already reached flawless. Their plasticity was much higher than adult coiled horn goats. Furthermore, one of the young coiled horn goats had the shock horn, which was a rare control-type fey that a defense-type coiled horn goat could comprehend. The coiled horn goat could use the shock horn to attack the target with a high-frequency shock and cause paralysis. Horn attack was a rare ability that an elite coiled horn goat could comprehend, and it was much better than the other 2 coiled horn goats' horn attack. Lin Yuan quickly walked to the stall and looked at the stall owner, who was leaning on a recliner and flipping through the newspaper. He asked, "Boss, what is the price of this coiled horn goat?" Lin Yuan asked for the price and quietly estimated the price in his heart. He didn't expect the uncle who was leaning on the recliner to lift his head and look at Lin Yuan. He chuckled and waved his hand. "Handsome, my wife isn't around. I don't know the price even if you ask me." Lin Yuan looked at the leisurely uncle and felt that the uncle was teasing him. Isn't this uncle just looking after the stall? He actually doesn't know the price of the fey. Seeing Lin Yuan's doubt, the uncle rubbed his stomach and explained, "The doctor said that my stomach isn't good, and I can only rely on a woman. Therefore, everything at the stall is decided by my wife. My wife went to the stall in front to buy meat. Tonight, I should be able to add a few hard dishes." Lin Yuan was flabbergasted. This uncle's skin was really thick. He actually said that he could rely on a woman so naturally and righteously. It was obvious that he was the king of the soft rice world. When looking at the uncle's satisfied expression, Lin Yuan's mind couldn't help but have a thought. It seems rather good to rely on a woman. However, Lin Yuan immediately tossed this thought out of his mind. He had been taking one step at a time for the past 10 years, and he had been eating hard rice for a long time. Lin Yuan stretched out his fist and shook it at the middle-aged uncle. The middle-aged uncle put down the newspaper and got into a defensive stance before yelling, "There are so many people here. There are so many people here. Don't even think about robbing them in broad daylight. If you want to rob, go to the stall at the side. That stall has all the weapon-type fays, and it will be easier for you to take them." When the middle-aged uncle yelled out, Lin Yuan's forehead was filled with black lines. The stall owner at the side had obviously heard the uncle's yelling and was infuriated. He immediately turned around and looked away. What the eye doesn't see, the heart doesn't grieve over. He then said in a very unlucky tone, "That means 10. You pretended to flip through the newspaper for half a day. It seems like you have some knowledge in your stomach and don't even know this." When the middle-aged uncle saw Lin Yuan looking at the coiled horn goat's cage, he immediately replied. Chapter 15. This uncle's wild imagination made Lin Yuan feel speechless. How wild must his imagination be to think that others would want to buy that shabby cage? Perhaps the hole in his brain was so big that only his neck was left. "Uncle, I'm talking about buying a coiled horn goat for 100,000 yuan. Lin Yuan didn't show it on his face, but a small bullet screen had already appeared in his heart. He was madly cursing this uncle with a bad stomach. Lin Yuan's price was very realistic. Even 2 ordinary coiled horn goats would cost around 60,000 Federation dollars, and the coiled horn goat, with the rare ability, would cost around 95,000 Federation dollars. Because Lin Yuan was anxious, he added an additional 5,000 Federation dollars to express his sincerity. When the uncle heard 100,000 federal coins, his eyes immediately lit up. He quickly picked up the phone and called his wife, who had gone to buy meat. After chatting for a while, the uncle hung up the phone and extended his fist like Lin Yuan had done. He then made a yeah gesture and said, 120,000 federal coins. Lin Yuan shook his head and turned to leave. Elite fays were widely circulated and had a market price. He had already expressed his sincerity to purchase this coiled horn goat with the horn shock ability, but it didn't mean that he could accept such a sky-high asking price. It wasn't like there weren't any fays that were comparable to the coiled horn goat in this fay market. Upon seeing that Lin Yuan was about to turn around and leave, the middle-aged man said anxiously, "Don't worry. How about you give me 105,000 federal coins, and I'll sell you this sheep? How about I give you a cage?" The bullet comments in Lin Yuan's heart sped up. If he had eyes on the back of his head, he would have rolled his eyes at this uncle. Only a ghost would want that broken cage of yours that hadn't been cleaned in months. Normally, Lin Yuan would definitely turn around and leave. However, since it involved the defense-type fey that his younger sister needed, Lin Yuan didn't have the impulse to turn around and look at this soft rice uncle. "Let me take another look. If there's nothing suitable, I'll buy the coiled horn goat that's in the innermost part." When the middle-aged man saw that Lin Yuan didn't say that he wanted to sell it immediately, he was a little unhappy and muttered, "If you buy it again later, I won't be giving you the cage." The bullet comments in Lin Yuan's heart had completely blocked the screen, so he turned around and left. Lin Yuan didn't walk far before he saw a huge stall in front of him that was surrounded by plenty of people. These people were surrounding the stall and holding baskets or bags. Lin Yuan felt that this group of people didn't look like they were here to buy fays. After taking 2 steps forward, he smelled the faint smell of blood in the air. As his nose twitched, it came from the stall in front. At that moment, Lin Yuan saw a burly man carrying a huge bamboo leaf-woven bag and walking forward with some difficulty. The bag was filled with spirit beast meat. In the past, no one would slaughter fays to sell in the fay market. Even if the Federation's residents needed to eat some fay meat, the fays that provided the meat were all reared and had specialized slaughterhouses. Upon seeing this scene, he guessed that he had walked to the cultivation base's stall that had been affected by the dimensional rift. Just as Lin Yuan was about to go forward to see if there was anything he could pick up, he heard a rough voice coming from the stall in front. "Thank you everyone for your support for the past few days. All the spirit beast meat has been sold out. For those who didn't manage to buy it, I would like to apologize. The rough man's voice was filled with fatigue and a trace of sorrow that couldn't be dispelled. Those who didn't manage to buy the spirit beast meat had queued for a long time and naturally weren't willing to leave. They shouted at the rough man, "Boss, I see that there are still a few severely injured spirit beasts inside. Why don't we slaughter them?" "That's right, boss. Spirit beasts must be slaughtered when they are injured. I didn't show any mercy even when my bamboo rat suffered from heatstroke. I would roast one by the river every day. It is truly delicious." When Lin Yuan saw this person shouting, he couldn't help but praise him in his heart. "Not bad, young man. Double bet." However, he didn't have his own freestyle, and he still had to practice harder. The rough man quickly waved his hand. "The things inside cannot be sold anymore. Sorry, everyone. You have waited for so long in vain. If you are interested, you can take a look inside and see if there are any spirit beasts that you fancy. There are only 3 spirit beasts left inside, and buying them is a profit." When the surrounding people saw that there really wasn't any meat to sell, they dispersed. After all, buying a severely injured fae might be a profit based on the fae's value. But how could they afford to hire a creation master to heal the fae? When the rough man saw that most of the people had left, he squatted down and carefully wiped the stains that were left behind from selling the fae's flesh. When he saw Lin Yuan walking over, the rough man habitually said, "The meat is sold out. The meat has been sold out. This stall will no longer sell spirit beast meat in the future." Lin Yuan looked at the rough man's exhausted expression. Apart from the determination in his eyes that supported his body, there was also a heavy sorrow. When the alien insects invaded the dimensional rift, it was said that only 2 out of the dozens of people in the fae breeding base had escaped. Furthermore, one of them had died not long after escaping due to shock and an infection from his wounds that wasn't treated in time. This boorish man was the only survivor of the fae breeding base. "Boss, I am not here to buy meat. I want to see if there are any other faes that you haven't sold." When the rough man heard that there was business, he quickly stopped wiping and stood up. When he unexpectedly met Lin Yuan's eyes, the rough man's heavy heart seemed to have calmed down quite a bit. The rough man only felt that a youth with red lips and white teeth was standing there, with a very amiable and natural temperament. It made people unconsciously feel close to him, and even his sorrowful and fatigued emotions seemed to have settled down because of this youth. The more the rough man looked at Lin Yuan, the more he felt that Lin Yuan was pleasing to the eye. All these changes might be related to Lin Yuan's appearance and temperament, but the true reason was because Lin Yuan had activated Morbius. Morbius activated its passive ability Calm Mind. This Calm Mind might only be effective on Lin Yuan, but 2 nights ago, when Lin Yuan was experimenting with this ability, he realized that Calm Mind also had a certain calming effect on people who were close to him, just that it wasn't as intense. However, Lin Yuan didn't know that this Calm Mind might be effective on people around him, but at the same time, it would also increase their favorable impression of him. It was fortunate that Lin Yuan didn't know about it. Otherwise, he wouldn't have used it recklessly. "Brother, I am not much older than you. You can just call me Big Brother Yang. There are still 3 severely injured faes inside. If you want to take a look, I will bring you over." Lin Yuan was rather flabbergasted when the boss addressed him as brother. Why did he suddenly call me brother? Chapter 16. Since the age of 8, Lin Yuan had been running a fae store by himself. He naturally wasn't someone who wasn't good with words. When he saw the boorish man being so enthusiastic, Lin Yuan also became friendly. "Big Brother Yang, I will have to trouble you to bring me in to take a look." The boorish man used his hand to pat on Lin Yuan's shoulder and laughed heartily. "You don't have to be so polite with your big brother." In just a few seconds of interaction, they are already addressing each other as brothers. This script doesn't seem right. Lin Yuan silently cursed in his heart. In fact, the Calm Mind ability wouldn't increase Lin Yuan's favorable impression by that much. To put it bluntly, favorable impression was just a kind of sensory impression. There were 2 reasons why the boorish man was treating Lin Yuan with such an attitude. Firstly, it was because the boorish man had a forthright temperament. Secondly, it was because the boorish man was feeling the worst, and Lin Yuan's appearance had caused the sorrow to dissipate. Therefore, the boorish man naturally blamed it on Lin Yuan. The boorish man led the way while Lin Yuan followed behind and sized up the surroundings. The stall outside was basically cleaned up. Apart from the 3 fays in the shed, there shouldn't be anything else. If Lin Yuan didn't make it today, he probably wouldn't be able to see this stall if he came tomorrow. After entering the shed, Yang Mingkai pointed at the 2 transparent boxes and said, "There are 2 web-spraying spiders inside. They look rather healthy from the front, but their abdomens are torn open. From the looks of it, they won't be able to last for another 2 days." Yang Mingkai wasn't a profiteer, but if it was someone else, Yang Mingkai wouldn't have explained the web-spraying spider's injuries in such detail. It was all thanks to Yang Mingkai's good impression of Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan was already using true data to check the 2 web-spraying spiders' data. Fey name: web-spraying spider, Fey species. Drum stomach subfamily / web spider species, Fey grade. Elite, 10 out of 10. Fey type: poison. Fey quality: flawless abilities, frowny face, buried web. During the movement process, it will spit out sharp spider threads that are hard to detect along the movement path. Poison web: spit out a bundle of poisonous web threads in front. These 2 web-spraying spiders were Elite X / flawless phase, and they were only a step away from reaching bronze grade. Had it not been for the dimensional rift, these 2 Elite X web-spraying spiders would have become bronze phase and awakened their exclusive skills in a short period of time. This was a good item that could not be seen in the Fey market during normal days. Fays that were about to reach bronze grade would normally be put up for sale on the star web. When Yang Mingkai saw Lin Yuan looking at the 2 web-spraying spiders seriously and had a sorrowful expression, he seemed to have thought of something. Due to the web-spraying spiders being insect species Fays and their small size, they managed to escape by burrowing into a large Fay's body. However, before burrowing into the large Fay's body, their abdomen was still pierced by the alien insects. Upon seeing Yang Mingkai's sorrowful expression again, Lin Yuan didn't use Morbius' calm mind this time. This was because some experiences could never be forgotten. It was like a hurdle. If you couldn't cross it, you would be stuck in it and stuck. After going through all these experiences, one would become stronger, and their heart would become stronger. This was Yang Mingkai's hurdle, and no one else could help. Yang Mingkai had to cross it himself. Big brother Yang, there are some things that are useless to be sad about. Why not cherish the past and look forward? Lin Yuan didn't wait for Yang Mingkai to speak and spoke again. If these 2 web-spraying spiders weren't injured, they would be able to sell for 300,000 Federation dollars on the star web. Support-type arachnid Fays like these had always been very expensive. The web-spraying spider's abilities had extremely powerful control abilities and slight toxins. They were considered a support-type Fey with a rather strong killing power. They were used to control the enemy to achieve a support-type effect, and it was violent and direct. The web-spraying spiders were small and were only around 10 centimeters long. They were rather agile and adept at concealment, making them an outstanding Fey for outdoor combat. Yang Mingkai's heart was stabbed by Lin Yuan's previous statement. He was alone now, and after experiencing the calamity, he was the only one left. Apart from the rescue personnel, no one else had said such words to him. Living in the harsh cold, a little warmth was enough to warm the body. A single matchstick's light was enough to illuminate the dark room. 300,000 Federation dollars is a little too little. When selling Fays on the star web, they would normally set a higher price. Due to the talent limitations, those who need it wouldn't mind spending a little more money. But now these 2 web-spraying spiders are injured, let alone 300,000 Federation dollars for each. It would be good if the 2 of them could be sold for 150,000 Federation dollars. Lin Yuan nodded. Just by looking at Yang Mingkai's pricing, he knew that Yang Mingkai was a very honest person. Apart from being able to form a contract with a web-spraying spider, the web-spraying spider itself was also a type of herb. A web-spraying spider's carcass would be worth around 50,000 Federation dollars. So setting the price of a severely injured web-spraying spider at 75,000 Federation dollars was already very fair. Big brother Yang, I wish to buy these 2 web-spraying spiders, but I don't have enough money on me. I wonder if I can use a fei to exchange for them? Lin Yuan was already planning to use the elite usnias to spend the money when he was shopping today. Elite usnias, which were production-type feis, never lacked a market, so Lin Yuan was very confident. When Yang Mingkai heard Lin Yuan's words, he frowned slightly. If it was someone else who said this, Yang Mingkai would have chased them away. It wasn't that there weren't people who used feis as money, but it was based on the premise that the other party was using a fei that was hard to find in the market, or was useful to the other party. Brother, I won't hide it from you. After I deal with this batch of feis, I plan to open another fei breeding base. I will start all over again, so I might not need the fei that you are using to exchange. Yang Mingkai might have a favorable impression of Lin Yuan, but favorable impression was favorable impression, and business was business. When Lin Yuan heard that Yang Mingkai was going to open a breeding base, the corner of his mouth curled up into a smile. Big brother Yang, I have some elite usnias. Do you think I can exchange them? Just as Lin Yuan finished speaking, Yang Mingkai spoke with pleasant surprise. Brother, you want to use elite usnias to exchange for them? I wonder what is the quality of your elite usnias? Yang Mingkai was planning to build another fei breeding base and start from a small one. It was the same as scrapping everything in the past and starting all over again. Everything was difficult at the beginning, and Yang Mingkai had been worrying about the phase that he needed to prepare for the breeding base. Elite usnias would be nurtured through special methods and would be able to produce plenty of normal usnias. Elite usnias were already qualified to be seedlings. However, almost no one would sell elite usnias. Yang Mingkai had already posted on the Star Web a few days ago that he wanted to purchase elite usnias, but he hadn't received any. There were a few who were interested in selling, but the asking price was at least twice the market price. If he were to accept them, it would be the same as being taken advantage of. When Yang Mingkai heard that Lin Yuan wanted to use elite usnias to exchange for them, he immediately got excited. The quality is rather good. If Big Brother Yang is willing to use elite usnias to exchange for them, you can come to my place to take a look at the goods first. When Lin Yuan saw Yang Mingkai's excited expression, he knew there was hope. Chapter 17. A weak voice suddenly echoed from the quiet shed, and it immediately attracted Lin Yuan's attention. Lin Yuan turned around and couldn't help but slap his thigh with excitement. With true data, the fei's information was immediately displayed. Fei name: Sharp Rock Bull Fei species. Horn species/bull species Fei grade. Elite 10 out of 10. Fei type: Earth Fei quality. Epic abilities: Frowny Face Rock Horn. Rocks are attached to the horns to unleash sacrificial charge without regard for injuries. Sacrifice: when the contractor receives damage, help the contractor share the damage. What excited Lin Yuan was that this Elite X Fei was actually of epic quality. In other words, as long as this Sharp Rock Bull was healed, it would be able to evolve from epic to bronze. It would then be able to choose one of the 3 random characteristics as an exclusive attribute. Most importantly, this Sharp Rock Bull was a defense-type Fei, and Chu Ci could use it. Yang Mingkai had also heard the bull's cry and walked forward to grab a bunch of wheat straw. He handed it to the Sharp Rock Bull and said to Lin Yuan with some pity, "This Sharp Rock Bull has always been our breeding base's treasure. This Sharp Rock Bull has always been the treasure of our breeding base. Who would have thought that this disaster would break its horn? The most precious thing about this Sharp Rock Bull isn't its epic quality, but its elite skill. This Sharp Rock Bull has comprehended the Sharp Rock Bull's exclusive rare ability, Sacrifice. Our breeding base has nurtured over 1,500 Sharp Rock Bulls for the past few years, and only this one has comprehended Sacrifice." Lin Yuan had also noticed the ability Sacrifice. He really liked the ability to bear the damage for the contractor. As his younger sister's contracted Fei, Sacrifice would definitely be able to protect his sister's safety. It was simply an excellent meat shield. However, Lin Yuan felt that this Sharp Rock Bull didn't seem to be very intelligent. The rock horn was considered a suicidal charge of sacrificial charge. Sacrifice was to help share the damage, and it was simply a fearless person who wasn't afraid of bleeding or crying. It was a top-notch iron fool, no a bumpkin fool. I wonder how much you are going to sell this sharp rock bull for. If this sharp rock bull was in a healthy state, even if he had over 20 pots of elite usneas, he wouldn't even be able to purchase a third of this sharp rock bull. This sharp rock bull was simply too exquisite. Young Minkai looked at the broken horn of the sharp rock bull and said after pondering for a while, "If this sharp rock bull is in a healthy state, I'm prepared to sell it for 1.5 radiance dollars. But if you want it now, I'll sell it to you for 200,000 Federation dollars. But I have to say something first. It isn't just this sharp rock bull. It is the same for the 2 web-spraying spiders. I have looked for a healer to take a look, and the 3-phase foundations are injured. Regular healers aren't able to do anything, and only creation masters are able to treat them." Lin Yuan was not afraid of this. When he had been experimenting with his spirit chi to evolve phase, he had used a pot of jasmine lily in the store as an experiment. Lin Yuan cut off half of the jasmine lily's root system. Normally, the jasmine lily would be dead unless a creation master nurtured it meticulously. However, after Lin Yuan transmitted his spirit chi to the jasmine lily's injuries recovered by itself. Therefore, Lin Yuan was certain that his spirit chi evolution method was able to heal phase that had their foundations injured. There was one thing that Lin Yuan was right about. The sharp rock bull's price was indeed astronomical. Federation dollars were the Radiance Federation's low-grade currency, and they were mainly used by ordinary people who were unable to sense spirit chi. Radiance dollars were the Radiance Federation's high-grade currency. High-grade phase had always been very expensive, and the price of high-grade phase could easily be in the tens of millions. Therefore, the Radiance Federation created Radiance dollars. 1 Radiance dollar was equivalent to 1 million Federation dollars, and it was mainly used between spirit chi professionals. If this sharp rock bull was in a healthy state, it could be sold for 1.5 Radiance dollars, which was 1.5 million Federation dollars. It wasn't a price that the current Lin Yuan could afford. But now that he was facing a severely injured sharp rock bull, Lin Yuan was still able to fork out 200,000 Federation dollars. "Big brother Yang, I understand. I have decided to make a deal. Why don't you head over to my place to take a look at the quality of my elite usneas before we discuss the deal?" Lin Yuan had already made up his mind to purchase the 2 web-spraying spiders and the sharp rock bull, so he couldn't wait to complete the deal. After the deal, Lin Yuan still had to treat the sharp rock bull's injuries. If he was any later, Lin Yuan might not be able to make it to the Chu Ci Academy's last train. It had been around 3 hours since Lin Yuan left his house. Lin Yuan might be able to sense the spirit chi, but his body had yet to fully recover. After not sleeping for an entire night and searching for Fays in the Fey marketplace for over 2 hours, Lin Yuan felt that his head was getting increasingly dizzy. When Yang Minkai heard that Lin Yuan was inviting him over to his place to take a look at the quality of the elite usneas, he immediately agreed. Lin Yuan might have promised that the elite usneas would be growing well, but Yang Minkai still had to take a closer look at the quality before he could be at ease. Yang Minkai wanted to use the elite usneas as seedlings for the breeding base to split the usneas young. Therefore, he had a rather high requirement for the elite usneas, and he couldn't afford to be careless. Yang Minkai already had a plan in his heart. Even if he took a look at Lin Yuan's elite usneas and realized that they didn't meet his requirements, he would still give them a discount based on the Star Web's price. If these elite usneas didn't reach the seedling standard, Yang Minkai would only be able to resell them and waste his time and energy. However, due to his favorable impression of Lin Yuan, Yang Minkai had already made the decision to make a deal in his heart. "Young brother, wait for me for a moment. I will clean up this stall and leave with you. Since you want those 3 severely injured Fays, then there is no need for this stall to exist anymore." When Lin Yuan heard Yang Minkai's words, his mood was very good. This was the feeling of being trusted. Yang Minkai still hadn't seen his elite usneas, and the 2 web-spraying spiders and the sharp rock bull wouldn't last for a few more days. Since Yang Minkai had taken away the stall, It meant that he trusted Yang Mingkai. He might not have seen the elite Devil Vine's quality, but he was already certain that he would trade with Yang Mingkai. Otherwise, Yang Mingkai wouldn't have taken away the stall, as the 3 severely injured Fays wouldn't be able to endure the torment. Big brother Yang, let me help you clean up. After speaking, Lin Yuan picked up the cleaning tools at the side of the stall and started to clean up the junk on the stall. Yang Mingkai didn't stop Lin Yuan and spoke while tearing down the stall. Chapter 18. Ostrich Logistics was a massive conglomerate in the Radiance Federation, and it covered almost half of the Federation's logistics industry. Ostrich Logistics' business was mainly to transport all kinds of Fays, and the Fay storage box was a patented invention of Ostrich Logistics. It used all kinds of advanced technology to create a convenient device for transporting Fays. When the Fay was stored in the Fay storage box, the Fay storage box might not shrink, but it could use gravity technology to offset the Fay's weight, allowing the heavy Fay to be transported easily. The Fay storage box had different grades according to the Fay's grade, and the normal specifications could be purchased in Ostrich Logistics store. If one wanted to transport extremely large Fays, they would need to go to Ostrich Logistics Star Web for a customized order. The Fay storage box was already commonly used, but the price wasn't low. A Fay storage box that was used to store elite Fays was priced at 1,000 Federation dollars. Such a price was already comparable to some of the cheaper elite Fays. If it was used to store ordinary elite Fays, it would be a waste of resources. Therefore, the elite Fays stored in the Fay storage boxes were usually more valuable among the elite Fays. Lin Yuan didn't expect Yang Mingkai to only sell injured Fays and actually prepare a Fay storage box. Big brother Yang, it will be much more convenient for us to transport them. We don't need to find a specialist to help us transport them, and it will save us a lot of time. Elite Fays like the Sharp Rock Bull and the web-spraying spiders had a certain lethality, especially when they were injured. With the Fay storage box, Yang Mingkai could save a lot of trouble. These Fay storage boxes were left behind from the breeding base. Most of the Fay storage boxes have been damaged and can no longer be used. I just disposed of those Fay storage boxes yesterday, but I still kept 3. 2 of them are elite Fay storage boxes for the web-spraying spiders, and 1 is bronze Fay storage box for the Sharp Rock Bull. Sigh. I'm afraid this Sharp Rock Bull will never have the chance to evolve into a bronze Fay. It is a pity for the epic quality and the sacrifice ability. Yang Mingkai was very efficient and quickly dismantled the shed. Lin Yuan originally wanted to order a rear-hooved donkey cart, but Yang Mingkai patted on Lin Yuan's shoulder and circulated his spiritual energy. A 3-meter-long lizard covered in black and red scales appeared in front of Yang Mingkai. When the lizard was released, it immediately let out a roar, which made Lin Yuan feel that the surrounding air had become a little hot. This lizard had a wrinkled crown, and the skin on the crown had an extremely bright red scale armor membrane. The reason why Lin Yuan felt hot was because the bright red crown was emitting heat. The lower part of the crown was mixed with more and more black, and when it reached the limbs and abdomen, it was almost black. Lin Yuan used true data to check on this huge red-black lizard. Fey name: Crown Fire Salamander Spirit Species, Crested Lizard/Scaled Lizard, Fey grade, Bronze 7/10, Fey type, Poison/Fire, Quality of Comprehension, Normal skills: Frowny face, broken teeth. In the process of biting, the teeth will be deliberately broken and buried in the target's body. Rolling tear. After biting the target, it will use its mouth as the core to twist and rotate its body to tear the target's flesh and bones. Exclusive skill: Frowny face, fire poison. Grows poison glands and connects the poison glands with the salivary glands, allowing the saliva to contain burning toxins. Regardless of the phase quality before elite, it would become normal after reaching bronze. Regardless of the phase grade, it would only evolve into a fantasy breed when the phase quality broke through epic to legend. Bronze phase would awaken exclusive skills, but they wouldn't increase their abilities. Due to the awakening of exclusive skills, all the abilities would be strengthened, and it was a qualitative change. This black and red lizard was a high-class bronze crown fire salamander. It might be called a fire salamander, but this crown fire salamander didn't know how to use fire-type elemental energy. When it reached bronze, its evolution direction was to strengthen its physical body, and its evolution method was prehistoric atavism. The crown fire salamander's bright red head had abnormally developed poison glands. The poison glands weren't connected to the crown fire salamander's teeth, but to the crown fire salamander's salivary glands. When the crown fire salamander used its teeth to bite, the poison in its head would be transmitted into the target's body. The bitten area would be charred black within a short period of time, as though it had been burned. This was how the crown fire salamander got its name. It wasn't that Lin Yuan hadn't seen bronze phase before. Spirit Chi professionals who were registered in the Radiance Federation could ride phase in the city, and Lin Yuan had occasionally seen them when he was purchasing goods. However, this was the first time he was observing this 3-meter-long bronze crown fire salamander at such a close distance. Lin Yuan still felt an indescribable shock in his heart. It was said that elite and bronze were a huge gap, and it would be a sublimation if one crossed it. From the looks of it, it was indeed true. A bronze phase prowess was far superior to an elite phase. Brother, I have nurtured this crown fire salamander rather well, right? As Yang Mingkai spoke, he didn't forget to pat the crown fire salamander's neck. It was obvious that he was very satisfied with his Fey partner. The crown fire salamander might have a ferocious nature and a sinister appearance, especially the layers of bright red head tumors that were indescribably strange. However, when it saw its owner interacting with it, it happily used its head to rub against Yang Mingkai's shoulder. Regardless of the situation, Spirit Chi professionals and their contracted phase would always be the closest partners. In the past, Lin Yuan would naturally be very envious of this scene, but not now. Lin Yuan touched the copper bracelet on his right wrist without a trace, and his heart softened. Lin Yuan now had his own contracted Fey. Morbius, Genius, and Chimey were Lin Yuan's contracted phase. He was no longer an ordinary person who could not contract phase and sense the spirit chi of heaven and earth. Brother Yang, your crown fire salamander's awakened characteristic fire poison is really good. It effectively increases the crown fire salamander's damage methods. Lin Yuan praised. Lin Yuan's words surprised Yang Mingkai. Brother, how did you know that my crown fire salamander had awakened the fire poison characteristic? Yang Mingkai didn't remember telling Lin Yuan about his spirit beast's characteristics. Lin Yuan pointed at the crown fire salamander's bright red crown. A normal crown fire salamander wouldn't have such a bright red crown, nor would it be so huge. Only a crown fire salamander that has awakened the fierce fire or fire poison characteristics would have such a crown. Brother Yang, when you interacted with the crown fire salamander, you avoided its mouth. That's why I deduced that the crown fire salamander had awakened the fire poison characteristic. After hearing Lin Yuan's explanation, Yang Mingkai understood and said with some surprise, "That's right. I didn't expect you to grasp the professional knowledge of Fey researchers at such a young age." Chapter 19. Observing and distinguishing the characteristics of spirit beasts was one of the abilities of the life profession Spirit Beast Observer. The Fey Observer would be able to conduct research on the Fey based on their observation and analysis. An erudite lifestyle occupation like a Fey Observer would normally be respected. Yang Mingkai now had a whole new level of respect for Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan was able to identify a bronze phase exclusive skill just by opening his mouth, and it was already extraordinary. Lin Yuan waved his hand and said, "Don't worry. Brother Yang, let's go. Otherwise, when your crown fire salamander is summoned, the surrounding low-grade phase will be affected." Yang Mingkai followed Lin Yuan's gaze and looked around. He realized that the stall owner next to him was already looking at him with rather hostile eyes. Yang Mingkai let out an awkward laugh and quickly beckoned Lin Yuan to sit on the crown fire salamander's back. As for the 3 spirit storage boxes that contained the web-spraying spiders and sharp rock bulls, they were swept up by the crown fire salamander's tail. After Lin Yuan pointed out the direction, Yang Mingkai rode on the crown fire salamander. The crown fire salamander sped away. Previously, when he had been riding on the thick-hoofed donkey, he had only felt a refreshing breeze. Now that the crown fire salamander was running, its speed was far faster than the thick-hoofed donkey. Lin Yuan had yet to become a D-rank spirit chi professional, so when the wind blew, he immediately felt a huge increase in pressure. If Yang Mingkai had not intentionally helped Lin Yuan block it, Lin Yuan would have been blown off the crown fire salamander's back. The howling wind not only blew away the tiredness in Lin Yuan's head, but it also made his heart soar. Galloping in the wind and controlling phase should be a man's life. When they arrived at the entrance of Lin Yuan's alley, Yang Mingkai stored the crown fire salamander. It wasn't because phase couldn't be ridden in this alley, but because it was too narrow. For a spirit beast like the crown fire salamander, which could stretch its limbs when running, it really couldn't move around. After getting off the crown fire salamander's back, Lin Yuan's hair was already a little messy due to the wind, giving him a wild handsomeness. Yang Mingkai said, "This crown fire salamander is a little too windy when it runs. Brother, are you alright?" Lin Yuan shook his head and said to Yang Mingkai, "Big brother Yang, I have to thank you. This is my first time sitting on a bronze phase back. It feels great." Yang Mingkai laughed heartily and said, "Riding the crown fire salamander isn't satisfying enough. When are you going to ride an aerial fae? Sniffing the thin air in the sky while overlooking the land? That is what I call satisfying." Under Lin Yuan's lead, they soon arrived at the entrance of Lin Yuan's store. When Lin Yuan opened the door, he didn't hear Chimey and Genius cries. It was likely that the two little fellows were still sleeping. It was fortunate that Lin Yuan had closed the second floor's door when he left. Otherwise, Genius and Chimey would have been woken up by the sound of the door opening. Yang Mingkai followed Lin Yuan into the store, and Lin Yuan went to pour a cup of water for Yang Mingkai and himself. "Brother Yang, there are no drinks at home, only water. Give me a cup." After passing the water to Yang Mingkai, Lin Yuan gulped down the cup of water. Yang Mingkai took the cup of water, but didn't drink it. It wasn't because Yang Mingkai didn't want to drink the water, but because he was dumbfounded by the rows of elite usneas on the shelves. The rows of usneas were growing delightfully. The vines were sturdy, and the leaves were densely packed. Some of the large leaves were even dripping with water droplets. Just by looking at the appearance, it was obvious that these elite usneas weren't of normal quality but elite quality. When elite usneas reached elite quality, they could be used as seedlings for division. This had obviously exceeded Yang Mingkai's expectations. There were over 20 pots of elite/elite usneas, which were rarely traded among elite fays. It was truly a shocking sight to see them displayed here. As compared to these elite usneas, the 3 pots of elite jasmine lilies were rather ordinary. When Lin Yuan saw Yang Mingkai staring at the usneas on the shelves and wanting to take a closer look, he took the initiative to invite him over. "Big brother Yang, why don't you take a closer look?" Before these 20 pots of usneas evolved, their foundations were very good. They had been adding energy ores into the soil, so their roots are very developed. Yang Mingkai followed Lin Yuan to the shelves and touched the usnea's leaves. He noticed that the leaves had a thick and fleshy feeling, and it was obvious that the leaves had a lot of water. Yang Mingkai plucked off one of the usnea's leaves, and copious juice flowed out from the broken stem. When he looked at the roots, just by looking at the thickness of the surface layer, he knew that Lin Yuan wasn't lying. These elite usneas were obviously superior among the elite usneas. After Yang Mingkai carefully observed the 20 pots of usneas, he wasn't surprised by the elite usneas themselves, but by the origin of the elite usneas. These elite usneas were nurtured so well that it was unbelievable. It was as though a creation master had just nurtured them carefully. Yang Mingkai naturally didn't think that Lin Yuan was a creation master, as creation masters were the most honorable occupations in the Radiance Federation. Even a rank 1 creation master would be able to open a store that occupied a vast area in Redbud City's city center. It was unknown how many combat class spirit chi professionals were thinking of ways to build a good relationship with creation masters. If Lin Yuan was really a creation master, he definitely wouldn't be holed up in this small store. It was obvious that there was a creation master behind Lin Yuan. Yang Mingkai had been operating his Fey breeding base for so many years, but he hadn't been able to build a relationship with any creation master. Otherwise, the sharp rock bull wouldn't have reached epic, and still hadn't evolved into bronze. Yang Mingkai did think of ways to look for a creation master for help, but he truly didn't have the chips to invite a creation master. If he only used Federation dollars and Radiance dollars to invite a creation master, he wouldn't even be qualified to enter the door. If he wanted to invite a creation master for help, he would have to bring the creation master's favorite spiritual ingredients and use them as the chips to make an appointment. Spiritual ingredients were hard to come by, and it was obvious that Yang Mingkai couldn't obtain them. Now that Yang Mingkai thought about the creation master behind Lin Yuan, he couldn't help but want to try to build a relationship with this creation master through Lin Yuan. But for a moment, Yang Mingkai did not know what to say. Lin Yuan saw that Yang Mingkai was observing Qing Luo for a long time without saying anything, so he asked, "Brother Yang, are you satisfied with these usnias?" Upon hearing Lin Yuan's voice, Yang Mingkai hurriedly returned to his senses and replied, "That's right." Chapter 20. When Lin Yuan saw that Yang Mingkai had suddenly become reserved, and even changed the way he addressed him, he couldn't help but say, "Big brother Yang, you're much older than me." "Brother Yang, you are much older than me. Just call me little brother." When Yang Mingkai heard Lin Yuan's words and saw that Lin Yuan's expression was very sincere, he patted Lin Yuan's shoulder and said, "Big brother Yang, you're much older than me. I also feel that it's comfortable to call you little brother." Lin Yuan also let out a mischievous laugh. "Big brother Yang, if you want more elite usnias, I do have them. How many pots do you want?" Lin Yuan originally planned to increase his spirit chi occupation, ranked to D-ranked, after delivering the phase to Chu Ci. During this period, he naturally wanted to evolve many phase. It was great that he could evolve elite usnias. Yang Mingkai cautiously extended a finger. "I'll add over 70 more pots for 100 pots. What do you think, little brother?" Before Lin Yuan could finish speaking, Yang Mingkai quickly added, "Little brother, your elite usnias are all elite quality. Little brother, your elite usnias are all of elite quality. If you sell them on the Star Web, they will be worth around 30,000 Federation dollars per pot. I can't let you suffer a loss, so I will add another 3,000 Federation dollars for each pot of usnias. How about 33,000 Federation dollars? Yang Mingkai immediately stated the highest price he had in mind. In fact, it was still a little low as compared to the high transaction prices on the Star Web. However, Yang Mingkai's price was very pertinent, and had reached the average price of elite/elite usnias. Yang Mingkai still wanted to open another Fey breeding base, and it would cost a huge sum of money. The price of 33,000 Federation dollars for 100 pots was already the limit that Yang Mingkai could offer. Lin Yuan pondered for a moment, and felt that Yang Mingkai's price was very reasonable. If he sold them on the Star Web, it would take a lot of effort, and he didn't know how many pots of usnias he could evolve during this time. "Big brother Yang, we'll go with your price. However, if you want 100 pots of usnias, you might need to give me 7 days. I can only collect them after 7 days." Lin Yuan needed 2 days to go to Chu Ci's school. Each pot of usnias required over an hour. Excluding the 20 pots of usnias that he already had, the rest of the usnias would need over 70 hours to evolve. Therefore, he would need at least 7 days to complete it. 7 days! Yang Mingkai was now even more certain that there was a creation master behind Lin Yuan. And it was obvious that Lin Yuan and this creation master should have an extremely close relationship. Otherwise, it would have been impossible to obtain such a large amount of goods at once. These 7 days were too fast. If such an order was placed in other suppliers' hands, they would never be able to complete it without at least 2 months. This was simply an immortal channel. Lin Yuan nodded. 7 days was his limit. He thought that Yang Mingkai felt that it was a little slow, but he didn't know that Yang Mingkai felt that Lin Yuan was too fast. At that moment, the door to the second floor was gently pushed open and carefully closed. A nimble figure rushed down the stairs and pounced into Lin Yuan's arms. It let out a meow and cupped Lin Yuan's hand. Lin Yuan, Chimey is still sleeping. It is a lazy worm. Genius has already woken up. Genius is very hard-working. Lin Yuan extended his hand and gently scratched Genius' nose. Genius let out a meow and sneezed. Subsequently, it obediently lay in Lin Yuan's embrace and looked very satisfied. When Genius had just arrived at this house, it was rather afraid of meeting strangers, but it was already used to it now. Almost every Federation citizen had a housekeeping beast, and Yang Mingkai wasn't an exception. However, Yang Mingkai's housekeeping beast had perished during the alien insect invasion. Brother, your housekeeping beast is truly intelligent. This is my first time seeing a housekeeping beast with such beautiful fur. When Genius heard Yang Mingkai mentioning it, it took a glance at Yang Mingkai before burying its head into Lin Yuan's chest, and was very attached. I also feel that Genius is the best and most adorable 100 questions beast. While speaking, Lin Yuan stroked Genius' silver gray fur. It was both affirmation and praise. When Genius had been carried back, it had been a little fellow that no one wanted. Its fur had been a dull mess. However, Genius had broken the norm of 100 questions beast and become the first normal ranked 100 questions beast in history. This was just the starting point and not the end point. As Genius contractor and partner, when someone praised Genius, Lin Yuan was very proud of Genius. Subsequently, Lin Yuan conducted a transaction with Yang Mingkai, 23 pots of elite/elite usnias, for 759,000 Federation dollars. After deducting the 350,000 Federation dollars from the elite web-spraying spider and the sharp rock bull, Yang Mingkai transferred 49,000 Federation dollars to Lin Yuan through his Star Web account. Yang Mingkai originally wanted to transfer the deposit for the 77 pots of usnias to Lin Yuan. The deposit was calculated at 10% of the price of each pot, but Lin Yuan rejected it. They agreed that the payment for these usnias would be settled when Yang Mingkai arrived at the appointed time to collect the goods, including the 20,000 Federation dollars in Lin Yuan's Star Web account. Lin Yuan now had 429,000 Federation dollars. This was a wealth that Lin Yuan didn't even dare to think about. Lin Yuan helped Yang Mingkai move the usnias on the rack onto the crowned fire salamander's back. After sending Yang Mingkai off, Lin Yuan immediately returned to the store. Lin Yuan was very pressed for time, as he had to heal this elite/epic sharp rock bull. After healing the sharp rock bull, Lin Yuan had to hurry to Chu Si's school. Now that Lin Yuan had money, and he would only be earning more money in the future, money would no longer be a problem for Lin Yuan. Therefore, Lin Yuan planned to reserve a bronze avian fei. This way, he would be able to shorten the journey from 6 to 7 hours to 1 hour. Lin Yuan took the ostrich logistics fei storage box and released the severely injured and weak sharp rock bull. The released sharp rock bull occupied most of the space in Lin Yuan's store. This sharp rock bull was just a young bull, and its body was less than 2 meters long. It had only been growing for 2 years. An adult sharp rock bull's body would be at least 2.5 meters long. However, this sharp rock bull's head had 2 broken horns and the fine wounds on its body, which were rather frightening. Lin Yuan looked at the sharp rock bull, and the sharp rock bull looked back at him. The sharp rock bull was obviously a little nervous, as it shook its head with unease. Lin Yuan carefully placed one hand on the sharp rock bull's broken horns, and slowly released spirit chi into the sharp rock bull's body. When the sharp rock bull felt the spirit chi, it slowly let down its guard. An elite phase spirituality wasn't low, and the sharp rock bull could sense Lin Yuan's goodwill, and obediently lay there. As Lin Yuan rapidly absorbed the spirit chi of heaven and earth, he also increased the injection of spirit chi into the sharp rock bull. In just 10 minutes, the fine wounds on the sharp rock bull's body gradually healed under Lin Yuan's spirit chi injection. After that, the sharp rock bull continued to lie there weakly for an hour. Chapter 21. The sharp rock bull's body was trembling, and it was obviously trying its best to endure the pain. However, even the sharp rock bull was unable to endure such immense pain. Lin Yuan felt a rather strong force coming from the hand that was placed on the sharp rock bull's broken horn. Lin Yuan gently shook it, and the sharp rock bull's pair of horns immediately fell off while a new pair of small horns grew on its head. Lin Yuan then placed his hand on the sharp rock bull's small horn and circulated the spirit qi conversion with all his might. When the sky gradually turned dark, the sharp rock bull's horns finally returned to normal, and they stopped growing when they were over a foot long. After nearly 7 hours, Lin Yuan finally recovered from the severely injured sharp rock bull's injuries. If the price of a severely injured sharp rock bull was 200,000 Federation dollars, if this healthy elite/epic sharp rock bull was placed on the star web, it could easily be sold for a high price of 1,500,000 Federation dollars, which was 1.5 radiance dollars. This also explained why creation masters were so esteemed. Lin Yuan, who was still releasing spirit qi into the sharp rock bull's body, felt as though he had touched a barrier. As long as he circulated his spirit qi and crashed against this barrier, the sharp rock bull would have a qualitative leap. Lin Yuan was suddenly ecstatic. This should be the barrier between elite life forms and bronze life forms, right? Lin Yuan increased the speed of his spirit qi release and used all his might to crash against this barrier. After half an hour, he finally shattered this barrier. At that moment, Lin Yuan saw the sharp rock bull, which was lying on the ground, suddenly stand up, and its body let out cracking sounds of bones shifting. In less than 2 minutes, the sharp rock bull's appearance had undergone a huge change. If Lin Yuan hadn't witnessed everything with his own eyes, he wouldn't have been able to recognize this Fei as the sharp rock bull from before. Now Lin Yuan opened up True Data to check on the sharp rock bull's condition. No, it shouldn't be called the sharp rock bull anymore. It should be called the sharp iron horn bull. The sharp iron horn bull, which was originally 2 meters long, had now turned into a sharp iron horn bull that was nearly 3 meters long. The sharp iron horn bull's biggest change wasn't in its body size, but the horns on its head. Although the sharp rock bull had the word rhino in its name, the rhino horn on its nose was only an inch long and basically useless. But now, the sharp iron horn bull's horn was like a 3-foot-long awl. It wasn't a smooth curve to the touch, but a sharp polygon. Every horn was as sharp as a blade. The horns on both sides had also shrunk from a foot long to nearly 3 feet long. The bull's horns were not open and closed, but like a bull's, they carried a mechanical arc that charged forward. It was heavy and full of power, as if it was born to pierce through things. Lin Yuan could now conclude that the evolution direction of the sharp rock bull into the sharp iron horn bull was prehistoric atavism, which increased its physical strength. Lin Yuan had personally witnessed the process of the Fei evolving from elite to bronze, and witnessed a metamorphosis of life. Sensing the position he occupied in this life transformation, he felt that his soul had been enlightened. This was a feeling that could only be brought about by sublimation or the creation of life. It was as if he had comprehended a fragment of the legendary chapter of life while pursuing it. After the sharp rock bull's body had evolved from epic, 3 exclusive skills appeared. Scale skin, a layer of scaly skin with the same composition as the skin grows on the surface of the skin. Trudge, conserve stamina when running. Pain absorption, when receiving damage, absorb a portion of the damage and turn it into vitality. Lin Yuan fell into deep thought while looking at the 3 exclusive skills. Among them, 2 of them were pretty good. For a defense-type Fei like the sharp iron horn bull, Trudge was obviously useless. Scale skin was an exclusive skill that allowed the sharp iron horn bull's steel-like skin to grow a layer of thicker scales. The scales were also made of the same material as the sharp iron horn bull's skin and could increase its defense. At the same time, when the sharp iron horn bull was charging, the scales would scratch the target, and the sharp iron-like scales would also cause significant damage. The other exclusive skill, pain absorption, was rather interesting. While receiving damage, they could absorb a portion of the damage to themselves to recover from it. It was simply an iron-like skill that was begging to be attacked, and the more he was attacked, the more stubborn he would become. After hesitating for a while, Lin Yuan finally chose pain absorption. Pain absorption could be used with sacrifice effectively, although the scale skin could add a layer of leather armor. If someone could cut open the sharp iron horn bull's original skin, it would be easy to break the scale armor. Therefore, no matter what, pain absorption was still superior. After Lin Yuan chose pain absorption, the sharp iron horn bull's evolution was considered complete. The abilities that it had comprehended at normal had also undergone some changes due to the evolution. Fey name: Sharp iron horn bull. Fey species: Giant horn species / bull species. Fey grade: Bronze 1/10. Fey type: Metal. Fey quality: Normal abilities. Frowny face. Rock horn: Metal is attached to the horns. Enhanced metal is attached to the horns to activate sacrifice charge regardless of injuries. Sacrifice: when the contractor receives damage, help the contractor take the initiative to share the damage. Exclusive skill. Frowny face. Pain absorption: when receiving damage, absorb a portion of the damage and turn it into vitality. Looking at the sharp iron horn bull in front of him, Lin Yuan could not be more satisfied. However, the more Lin Yuan looked at the sharp iron horn bull, the more he felt that it was a power offense type Fey with a defensive skin. The sharp iron horn bull's abilities and exclusive skill were all very compatible. As Chu Si's first Fey, the sharp iron horn bull was simply the most suitable. However, it was a little strange for a girl to contract such a sharp iron horn bull. It was simply a girl and a beast. However, this sharp iron horn bull was the best defense type Fey that Lin Yuan could obtain with all his abilities. After evolving the sharp iron horn bull, Lin Yuan felt that the spiritual power in his body was equivalent to evolving 30 pots of elite Usnias. This made Lin Yuan realize that the higher the grade of the Fey, the more spiritual power feedback he would receive. It was also thanks to the fact that the sharp iron horn bull was an elite X-Fey. Otherwise, he would not have been able to evolve it to bronze in such a short time. Looking at the dark blue and misty night sky outside the window, Lin Yuan used his cell phone to book a bronze aerial journey. While waiting for the aerial Fey, Lin Yuan prepared dinner for Genius and Chimey. He also fed the iron horn rhinoceros some Usnia vines. Then, he stored the bronze sharp iron horn bull in the Fey storage box. Soon enough, the bronze aerial Fey arrived at the alley entrance. Lin Yuan held the Fey storage box with the sharp iron horn bull and bade farewell to Genius and Chimey, which had been chirping and singing ever since it woke up. Then he boarded the aerial Fey. Chapter 22. 3 portions of patula sprouts, 1 portion of deep-sea ebony, and 1 portion of platinum beast blood essence. A woman wearing a moonlight robe was shaking the crystal container in her hand as she gave a pleasant command. For emerald green birds with feathers that looked like vines and leaves quickly and accurately used their beaks to pick up the materials in the crystal containers. A man and a woman stood not far from the woman in the moonlight robe. The man had a dignified expression, while the woman had a heroic aura. At this moment, the two of them were using spirit chi to hide their presence, afraid that they would disturb the woman who was testing the medicine. The spirit chi emitted from their bodies faintly carried a mysterious vortex of runes. It showed that the two of them were king-level powerhouses who had comprehended wills from mountains, rivers, oceans, and even the sky. However, the two king-level powerhouses were looking at the woman testing the medicine with very respectful gazes. The woman in the moonlight robe used her spirit energy to shake the potion, and the smell of the potion flowed out from the opening of the bottle. The fresh fragrance of the grass was like the smell of freshly cut grass after the rain, refreshing the mind. When the 3 portions of patula sprouts were added to the medicine, the aroma emitted was like a towering tree instantly growing out of the cut grass. Towering trees grew, forming a primeval forest. As the woman in the moonlight robe poured in the dark red platinum beast blood, the smell suddenly burst forth with a terrifying pressure. It was as if some kind of fierce beast was hibernating in the depths of this primitive forest, staring at its prey and waiting to pounce. The two king-level powerhouses' heads were covered in sweat, and they were a little nervous from the aura of this group of beasts. The woman in the moonlight robe continuously poured her spirit chi into the crystal bottle. The spirit chi stirred the originally emerald green medicine and the dark red platinum beast blood into a crystal clear amber color. After stirring for a full 7 minutes, the woman stopped. He picked up the deep-sea ebony and gently sniffed it, as if he was trying to identify the year of the deep-sea ebony. Then, he directly used his spirit power to grind the deep-sea ebony into fine powder and poured it into the amber liquid. As soon as the deep-sea ebony entered the amber liquid turned dark green. In the primitive jungle that was originally surrounded by beasts, there seemed to be a Kaneken rainstorm that could be called a miracle in the history of the evolution of life that lasted for 2 million years. In an instant, the primeval forest was irrigated into a deep sea. The beasts that had been accumulating power and waiting for action became swollen floating corpses in the deep sea. As for the 2 king-class elites, they felt as if layers of seaweed had wrapped around their arms and legs, then around their necks. It was as if they were sealed in this dark green sea forever. At this time, the woman in the moonlight robe began to use her spirit chi to stir the medicinal liquid that had been infused with the deep-sea ebony. As the woman moved, every stir was like a cycle of reincarnation. Those dead sea beasts in the deep sea seemed to have suddenly come back to life, and those entangling aquatic plants also loosened their claws and teeth, turning into flowers that grew among the reefs. Light and darkness, new life and decay, alternated again and again as the woman shook her wrist. Finally, this dark green medicinal liquid was stirred by the spirit chi into a sparkling object with an emerald green luster. The moment it transformed into a sparkling object, the suffocating deep sea, aquatic plants and beasts all disappeared. There was only the tactful and tranquil feeling of the setting sun and the lone wolf fly together. The autumn water is the same color as the sky. At this time, the 2 king-class elites took a deep breath and withdrew their protective spirit chi. The dignified man hurriedly stepped forward and said, "Moon Empress, it has been hard on you. May I know if the concoction of this medicine is complete?" The woman in the moonlight robe raised her head, and her aura was as clear as the moonlight. "Summon your Fae, Sikong." When the stern-looking middle-aged man heard this, he quickly summoned his Fae, which was a giant tiger-shaped spirit beast. The woman in the moonlight robe shook her wrist again, and the emerald green liquid in her hand turned into a wisp of fragrance that entered the giant tiger-shaped spirit beast's body through the wings of its nose. Immediately after, this giant tiger-shaped spirit beast's body crackled, as if it had experienced a new life. The woman in the moonlight robe nodded and said, "It has already evolved to a legendary level. It has already evolved from the epic to the legendary. You just need to fuse the comprehended willpower rune with the Fae to evolve into a fantasy breed." Sikong was overjoyed and quickly bowed. "Moon Empress, if you need anything from me, please feel free to ask. I will not hesitate to go through water and tread on fire." The woman in the moonlight robe waved her hand and said, "You don't have to go through water and tread on fire. You have already found a pair of dragon eyes for this Empress. That is your reward." When the stern-looking middle-aged man heard the Moon Empress words, he quickly cupped his fists and said again, "Sikong is willing to serve the Moon Empress." At this time, the giant tiger-shaped Fae had completed its evolution and quietly awakened. When it sensed its changes, it was in high spirits and was about to roar. But all its voices were suddenly stuck in its throat as it lay on the ground dejectedly. On the table, a small rabbit was pulling out a finger-sized carrot from a jade flower pot. It even brought out some red crystal-like sand. The little rabbit looked at the sand it brought out with disdain. With a kick of its leg, it kicked the sand to the ground and leisurely nibbled on the radish. As for the green vine bird that was preparing the materials, it habitually picked up the scattered red crystal soil and placed them back into the jade flower pot. The giant star tiger-shaped phase transformation was because the small rabbit casually glanced at the giant tiger-shaped spirit beast when it was pulling out the carrot. The woman in the moonlight robe carried the small rabbit from the table and said to Sikong, "The Creation Master Assessment has always only allowed one to advance one rank at a time. After each advancement, one needs to wait 3 years before they can participate in the advancement assessment again. How are we going to select the truly talented Creation Masters? Sikong, go and inform the Creation Master Association that anyone who passes the Class 1 Creation Master Assessment within 2 hours can choose to skip the Advancement Assessment for the 3 life occupations and directly take the Class 2 Creation Master Assessment. Sikong carefully memorized the Moon Empress instructions and asked, "Moon Empress, can we choose to advance the Class 2 to Class 3 Creation Master Assessment after completing the Class 2 assessment?" "Only Class 1 to Class 2 is fine." After the woman in the moonlight robe finished speaking, she picked up the crystal bottle and prepared to concoct the medicinal liquid. She was sending off the guest. Sikong put away his newly promoted legendary Fae and bowed. He then hurriedly went to complete the mission that the Moon Empress had assigned him. At this moment, the heroic-looking female king-class expert who had been silent all this while spoke. "Moon Empress, are you thinking that there aren't any talented youths among the creation masters in the Federation? So you are choosing to reform?" The Moon Empress shook her head and spoke. "This is just this Empress' personal matter. Bamboo Monarch and Chef Supreme have accepted disciples. This Empress cannot fall behind those 2 old things." The heroic-looking woman was shocked. The Moon Empress actually had plans to accept disciples? This was truly a huge piece of news. As one of the Radiance Federation's 3 Class 5 Creation Masters, becoming the Moon Empress disciple was simply like ascending to the heavens in a single bound. However, she didn't know which city the Moon Empress disciple was from. If she was from the Redbud City, then as the City Lord of the Redbud City, she should be able to receive plenty of rewards from the Moon Empress. "Ling Xiao, do you know that a Class 1 dimensional rift has just opened in the Xia region under your Redbud City?" The heroic-looking woman quickly spoke. Ling Xiao has already heard about the situation from the Redbud guards. "I wonder what instructions does the Moon Empress have?" The heroic-looking woman was a little puzzled. Why would an important figure like the Moon Empress mention a mere Class 1 dimensional rift? This Empress heard that the dimensional rifts aren't very stable recently, and it should be because the dimensional tide is coming. The alien insect dimensional rift has always been the most dangerous dimensional rift during every dimensional tide, and your Redbud City is the city with the most alien insect dimensional rifts. Send more people to guard the entrance of every alien insect dimensional rift to prevent the dimensional rift from threatening the safety of the nearby residents during the dimensional tide. When Ling Xiao heard the Moon Empress, she quickly replied, "Moon Empress, don't worry. Ling Xiao is the Redbud City Lord. As long as Ling Xiao is around, Ling Xiao will always be the backbone of the Redbud City." The Moon Empress nodded and looked at Ling Xiao. "Sikong, this matter will still take some time to be implemented. Why don't you return to the Redbud City first, and let the Redbud City's Creation Master Association implement the new rules for the Creation Master Assessment first?" Ling Xiao understands. After replying, Ling Xiao was rather shocked. The Moon Empress had emphasized the issue of the Creation Master Assessment twice. It seemed like the Moon Empress really had the intention to accept disciples. Chapter 23. The Black-Winged Wind Falcon wasn't considered fast among the bronze flying fays. However, its back was very flat, and the feathers on its back were very thick. Therefore, the Black-Winged Wind Falcon became one of the more popular bronze flying fays. The travel fee for this trip was equivalent to half a month of Lin Yuan's previous store's income. It was at least 2,000 Federation dollars. And if Lin Yuan wasn't in a rush, he would really be reluctant. "Young man, if you are used to the feeling of flying in the sky, I will let the Black-Winged Wind Falcon ascend a little higher. When we reach the clouds, the airflow will be relatively gentle, and the speed will be slightly faster." The Black-Winged Wind Falcon's pilot knew that this was Lin Yuan's first time riding on a flying fae, so he was very considerate and didn't let the Black-Winged Wind Falcon ascend directly into the sky. The air at high altitudes was thin, and people who had never ridden on flying fays before might experience dizziness due to the lack of oxygen for a short period of time. Lin Yuan nodded and said, "Come on. I am ready." While speaking, Lin Yuan's complexion was a little pale. He looked at the ground that was dozens of meters away, and the indistinct figures on the streets. Lin Yuan felt a little acrophobic. It was fortunate that his acrophobia wasn't intense, and he could still endure it. Under the pilot's instructions, the black-winged wind falcon flapped its wings and scuttled towards the clouds. While ascending, the black-winged wind falcon raised the feathers on its back and helped Lin Yuan, who was on the black-winged wind falcon's back, to block the incoming airflow. Soon enough, the black-winged wind falcon had already ascended to the clouds and was flying steadily. The air in the clouds was indeed thin, but it wasn't as hot. When Lin Yuan inhaled the chilly wind into his lungs, there was a burning sense of urgency in his lungs due to the lack of oxygen. Lin Yuan circulated his spirit qi, and this sense of urgency quickly vanished. Lin Yuan looked around and noticed that there were bundles of lonely clouds not far away, and it felt as though they were within reach. When he reached out his hand, he didn't know if his hand was grabbing onto the clouds, or if he was already in the clouds and didn't realize it. Looking down, Lin Yuan's spirit jolted. When he sat on the clouds, the acrophobia was gone, and it was replaced by an extremely vast expanse. The river was like a jade belt, and the mountains were luxuriant and majestic. The mountains were crisscrossed like the spine of the earth, and the crisscrossed mountains were evergreen. Lin Yuan saw a barren mountain in the distance, and it was the destruction caused by the battle between the two gold fays a few months ago. The fire from the gold fire-type fay had burned all the vegetation on the mountain. The barren mountain that should have been scorched by the raging fire had been dyed with a thin layer of green after several months of rain. At that moment, Lin Yuan suddenly felt a ball of enlightenment rise in his heart. Under the green mountain was the earth. The earth blessed the green mountain, and the green mountain repaid the earth with lush greenery. The green mountains were the embodiment of the vitality of the earth. Even the raging fire could not burn away the vitality of the green mountains. Lin Yuan looked down at Green Mountain and felt that it was exceptionally clear in his eyes. It was as though Green Mountain's willpower was like the bitter cold air in the sky, which Lin Yuan could easily inhale into his lungs. At Fei and Lin, Lin's spiritual energy and in Mountain, at Lin and Dragon-Winged Wind in. When Lin Yuan's weak spiritual energy fused into the mountain, it turned into a green rune. The rune was filled with the veins and vitality of the mountain. The rune danced around Lin Yuan's spiritual energy, as though it was nourishing it. Lin Yuan felt his mind was clear. When he looked at the mountain range, it was a different scene. He had a thorough understanding of the mountains and rivers, and he was so shocked that he almost bit off his tongue. I have comprehended the willpower of the mountain. Furthermore, the willpower of the mountain has been condensed into a rune. If some experts were to know of Lin Yuan's current situation, they would be so angry that they would jump up. In order for a fantasy breed to be born, the Bronze Fae had to reach legend. It would then have to comprehend a willpower rune and fuse it with the legend Fae. It would allow the Fae to comprehend the spiritual willpower and transform into a fantasy breed. Legend Faes were rare, but if a creation master could help it and nurture it meticulously, it would be possible. However, the willpower rune that came from the mountains, rivers, oceans, and sky could only be visualized and comprehended by spirit chi professionals. It was unknown how many spirit chi professionals were stuck with the willpower rune, causing them to have legend phase, but not be able to evolve them into fantasy breeds. It was Lin Yuan's first time, sitting on a flying fae, and looking down at the mountains and rivers. He had actually comprehended a willpower rune from the mountains and rivers, and he couldn't help but sigh. When a person was unlucky, not only would the kettle break when pouring water, but when pouring water, it would also break and hit their feet. When a person was lucky, they would casually open a bottle of drink and win the lottery. Ever since Lin Yuan could sense the spirit chi of the world, he seemed to have been constantly lucky. It was only a matter of time before his fae evolved to legend. Now that he had comprehended a willpower rune, he would be able to have a fantasy breed fae. However, the willpower rune's usage had to complement the fae. Otherwise, it would be like comprehending a willpower rune from the earth and using it on an aquatic fae. Although the aquatic fae would also evolve into a fantasy breed, it would not be able to do so. Although the aquatic fae would also evolve into a fantasy breed, its second exclusive skill would produce characteristics related to the earth due to the willpower rune. This wouldn't have any effect on the Fae. Not only would it be a waste of a willpower rune, but it would also be a waste of the legend Fae's talent. Therefore, Lin Yuan had to carefully consider the willpower rune that he had comprehended from the mountains and rivers, and the first Fae that he wanted to use Morbius Spirit Lock on. Time passed quickly, and when Lin Yuan returned to his senses from his spiritual world, the black-winged wind falcon was already preparing to land in a brightly lit city. The city that he was landing in was Redbud City's main city. The black-winged wind falcon landed at the entrance of the Redbud Spirit Chi Intermediate Academy. Lin Yuan held the Fae storage box that contained the sharp iron hornbull and alighted from the black-winged wind falcon before calling Chu Ci. Lin Yuan had a special temperament like the grass after the rain, which was exceptionally fresh. Moreover, after Lin Yuan's body had recovered, his originally good facial features weren't as pale as before. Instead, they were filled with vitality and rosy. This made the female students who had just returned from shopping and eating at the entrance of the Redbud Spirit Chi Intermediate Academy cast frequent glances at Lin Yuan. At that moment, Lin Yuan's call was connected. When Lin Yuan picked up the call, he recalled that Chu Ci had contracted the gray beetle without informing him, and he couldn't help but feel a little angry. However, when he heard Chu Ci's apprehensive voice and immediately admit her mistake, Lin Yuan's anger immediately dissipated. His lips curled into a rejoicing, helpless, and doting smile. "Where are you now?" "I am at the entrance of your school." Lin Yuan was halfway through his sentence when he heard a familiar voice coming from the other end of the call. It was the irascible teacher Bao's voice. Chapter 24. When Lin Yuan heard teacher Bao's voice coming from the phone, he was a little puzzled at first. Then he reacted and immediately felt grateful. Teacher Bao might not have a good temper, but he was a good teacher who could do anything for his students. Teacher Bao knew that Chu Ci was calling Lin Yuan, so he immediately snatched Chu Ci's phone and said loudly, "I told you about the situation yesterday morning. I told you about the situation yesterday morning. Why are you only here now as a parent? You really don't care about Chu Ci's studies." As teacher Bao spoke, he suddenly thought of something, and his words were stuck in his throat. Teacher Bao thought of the information he had seen when understanding Chu Ci's family situation. What could he blame a boy who did his best to provide for his sister's school? Could he blame him for being incapable and not being able to find a good Fae for his sister? When Lin Yuan heard the irritable teacher Bao's voice, he hurriedly said, "Teacher Bao, sorry for troubling you." "Teacher Bao, sorry for troubling you. I have prepared a Fae for Chu Ci, and it is at the school entrance. However, I am not a student and cannot enter the school. I wonder if you can let Chu Ci pick me up at the school entrance?" Teacher Bao said, "Wait at the school entrance for a while. Wait for a while at the school gate. I'll bring Chu Ci to pick you up. Help me persuade Chu Ci when the time comes." Before Chu Ci could take the phone, teacher Bao hung up. He was really a swift and decisive teacher. However, Lin Yuan felt a little strange. Why did teacher Bao's attitude toward him suddenly improve? Lin Yuan did not know that teacher Bao's change in attitude toward him was due to understanding Chu Ci's family situation. If Lin Yuan knew, he would probably just smile. When other children were still enjoying their innocent childhood in the arms of their parents, he had no choice but to take his sister to be independent early. He had suffered from the cold, starvation, and serious illnesses, but he had tenaciously grown up until now. He had never been opportunistic or accepted charity. He might be poor, but he had always had self-respect and self-improvement. Lin Yuan had never felt inferior about his own situation. He did not think that Chu Ci needed to feel inferior either. As long as she stood upright, walked straight, and did not let herself down, she would always walk the path of vicissitudes. Lin Yuan had been waiting at the door. When the female students beside him saw that Lin Yuan had no intention of leaving for a while, they dared to approach him. Those who were more daring would approach Lin Yuan and ask for his star web account, making Lin Yuan a little tired of dealing with them. Fortunately, after he rejected a few people, although some people still looked at him from time to time, no one came forward to ask for his star web account. This undoubtedly made Lin Yuan heave a sigh of relief. Shortly after, a beautiful figure rushed out of the Redbud Intermediate Spirit Chi Academy's entrance. The beautiful figure originally wanted to throw herself into Lin Yuan's arms, but when she got closer, she seemed to recall something. She timidly stood in front of Lin Yuan and spoke pitifully. "Brother, I was wrong. I shouldn't have contracted the gray beetles." Lin Yuan could not help but complain in his heart. If this girl didn't make a mistake, how could she call him brother? He would usually address Lin Yuan as Lin Yuan. "Do you think that's all I'm angry about? This decision concerns your future. Not only did you not discuss the choice of your first Fae with me, but you didn't even prepare to tell me about the contract." Lin Yuan had been very stern when he spoke, but as he spoke, he saw that Chu Si's eyes were slightly red, so his tone softened. At that moment, Teacher Bao's voice came from behind Chu Si. "Chu Si, why are you running so fast? Why didn't you wait for me? I'm not a combat-type professional." Teacher Bao was a spiritual ingredient analyst and a teacher who taught spiritual ingredient theory. He was still panting after catching up to Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan quickly took a step forward to greet Teacher Bao. Teacher Bao only took a glance at Lin Yuan and could not help but feel a little regretful. His tone during the phone call had been too harsh. Looking at Lin Yuan's clean and tidy clothes that were a little faded from washing, Teacher Bao knew how thrifty this youth was. "Chu Si's brother, right? Hello. Chu Si is the most talented student I have seen in all my years as a teacher in charge. She is also very hardworking and serious in her studies. Therefore, you must not be careless in your choice of Faes. It is best for your first contracted Fae to be an elite Fae. If it is a normal Fae, the time needed for it to grow into an elite Fae will be a waste of Chu Si's potential." When Teacher Bao saw Lin Yuan, he could not say anything harsh. He explained Chu Si's situation in detail and emphasized the importance of the first Fae. He thought about the Fae that Lin Yuan had brought for Chu Si. If it was only a normal Fae, then he could naturally let Chu Si contract the yellow-spotted hound that he had prepared for Chu Si. Although the yellow-spotted hound was not considered outstanding among the elite defense-type Faes, at least it would not be a waste of Chu Si's talent. Lin Yuan rarely came to Chu Si's school, and this was the first time he had heard a teacher praise Chu Si in front of him. Lin Yuan could not help but feel a sense of pride. At that moment, Chu Si secretly tugged at the corner of Lin Yuan's clothes and winked at him. Chu Si knew her family's situation. Perhaps the spirit beast that Lin Yuan had brought was only normal, but she did not want to accept the elite Fae that Teacher Bao had prepared for her. Given Lin Yuan's temper, she knew that if she really took Teacher Bao's yellow-spotted hound, he would definitely save up the money for it in the shortest time possible and return it to Teacher Bao. Chu Si had contracted the gray beetles without informing Lin Yuan beforehand, because she did not want him to suffer too much. Naturally, it was the same now. Lin Yuan lifted the Fae storage box on the ground and said to Teacher Bao, "Teacher Bao, thank you for your help to Chu Si. I brought a pretty good Fae for Chu Si. I wonder if there is a suitable place for Chu Si to sign a contract with this Fae." As soon as Teacher Bao heard Lin Yuan's words, he wanted to ask what grade the Fae was. However, after recalling that they were at the school's entrance, he answered Lin Yuan, "Tonight is the deadline for students to submit their first contracted Fae. Let's go to my office. After Chu Si contracts the Fae, I'll report it." Lin Yuan looked at Chu Si and placed the Fae storage box in her hand. "The Fae that you will be forming a contract with is inside. Take the Fae storage box and get close to it first." A massive Fae storage box was placed lightly in Chu Si's hand. The Fae storage box might not have any weight, but when she held it in her hands, she felt that it was heavy as though it weighed a ton. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.